is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Empty backfield, trips right for Bo with a snap and throw. Steps, no throw there, going to run to the right. Now we'll throw wide open end zone. Touchdown, Oregon. Touchdown, Ducks, Tez Johnson.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Penix wants to throw, looking downfield, looking, takes a shot. Roman Dunze! Did he hold on? Yes, sir! Touchdown, Washington! Roman Dunze! Playing a Bolitnikoff kind of game. Another explosive, this time for 33, and the Huskies take the lead.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Here's Benson on the delay. Good call, well executed. Benson heading toward the end zone. 38-yard touchdown, Florida State.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Florida drops into a zone. Daniels trying to run it. Gets some space. What a move! Jaden Daniels again! Jaden Daniels, touchdown LSU! 51 yards!
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Loftus with 3 touchdown passes tonight in his second career start, trying to tie the game. Throws, end zone, no, and that's it. Carolina keeps the victory bell in double overtime.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Friday. Good afternoon. Hope you've had a really good week. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Maybe that will be affected by what your college football team does or doesn't do. David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. Here on the set, Garrett Ross and Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway helping to run various parts of the mothership. We will hear a couple of notes about A&M interviewing Jeff Traylor. All of that, Michigan, new news on them. Another coach, or at least a coach, has been fired. And a couple of the notes as far as college, quarterbacks coming back, etc. But we're going to start today. Baylor, Colt Barber, earlier today, posted this up in the special section, the premium section. There has been a big change made with Baylor's NIL partner, GXG, regarding football. Baylor's philosophy, and this is the first year they really did this. They were behind the curve. Sometimes they will say, no, they weren't. But they just started it, and everybody on scholarship was getting an X amount of money that was very comparable to the upper probably third of the Big 12 per scholarship player, and even some walk-ons. And I haven't really been able to confirm the walk-ons, but I believe there's a number of those too. But there was no money when it comes to, well, certain players have more value than others. It all depends on how you feel about that, but we know it's there. It's been there now for a couple of years. And Baylor, GXG, has now come double down. And that will change effective 24-25, including perhaps even a possible hit or two when it comes to the next class that signs in December, and retaining players on their current roster, no matter what the coaching situation is, and the transfer portal.
Well, that's good. I mean, they need to not only do they need to step that up, as everybody around the country needs to step it up, but they do need to make it more public for the fans to know about. Like Garrett and I on the post-game show, I would say easily 4 weeks in a row.
Easily, yes.
Easily 4 weeks in a row, we'll get a question about what's Baylor's NIL situation. And I hate being in the position of being like, look, dude, I really don't know anything about it other than I know that there is one and I've heard things about it, but I can't confirm anything about it. Everything's in the shadows, and it doesn't need to be. It's not like it's illegal. It's not like this is Eric Dickerson's Trans Am or something like that. Like, this is all there. you may not need to like give actual dollar figures, but the fans need to know that you're out there and doing things. And the ones that I've seen around the country that are most successful are the ones that announce that, like, hey, our NIL collective has partnered with this awesome player. Here he is. That way the fans can feel at least as much peace of mind as they can, even though nothing is permanent in college football, of knowing that, yes, there's someone out there doing something to keep competitive with the rest of the teams in this whole big mishmash of college football.
Craig Colt also in the premium section, and I did ask him about it because you put something in the premium section, you want it to be there, and it's been marinating for the last several hours. Each player will receive a different fair market value on top of their base salary, or pay, whatever you want to call it, in 24-25, which is where the difference in distributions have come from or will come from. So yes, the base pay remains the same, but the fair market value will always now be above the top of the base, creating a variance certain players. Caden Jenkins has put up a couple of tweets in the last 2 or 3 days about respect my decision. I would think this also is probably in time to make sure that Caden Jenkins now can make the decision of staying at Baylor. No one's told me that, but it appears that has a little bit to do with it. Not just Caden Jenkins, but also those who are thinking about moving elsewhere.
Yeah, with all due respect to Caden Jenkins, I mean, he's not like a Thorpe finalist right now either. You know, like he's a young player who's had 3 interceptions on the year, and that's a bright spot in a sea of not too many bright spots. Really good future ahead of him. I can see why there would be teams maybe interested NIL-wise, but, you know, I don't want to make it out to be too much of what it's not. But, yeah, they would like to have him back, and I think that this obviously plays into that or others like him that could be looking around or would have the opportunity to look around. So, yeah, if I was forming a list of guys who I would think have already been contacted or that we've mentioned quite a bit, he would be in that mix. But, yeah, he's not a superstar just yet. And so, you know, we'll see how that plays out. But I guess it's good news. You know, it's obviously not bad news that they've got something going on now with NIL. I don't know why it's been so confusing to begin with. I feel like we've had a bunch of conversations about the NIL part at Baylor, had people come in here and interview, and you know, it seems like every time it's like, oh, well, now it's together, and then now it's together, and now it's together. So hopefully this is actually what they've been needing. I haven't been following closely enough to know what effect that's had or not had on the bigger picture, but the better your NIL operation can be, the better it should be for your program. So if they're improving that by, you know, getting more money into the mix or offering to Caden Jenkins more money than the backup right guard, then I think that's the obvious smart play and should have kind of been what it was to begin with, but I'm sure we'll learn why that couldn't be the case because maybe it was donations or it was some other factor that we don't know. Bottom line is hopefully this is like now we're here and now it's ready to go and now we're ready to play ball. And I know that they'll say, well, we already were anyways, but this seems like it's a different thing. So if that's the case, then good for them.
Jeremy Fudge is going to join us on Monday at 3:30. He's a part of a lot to do with what they're doing when it comes to NIL, and he has put up various posts in the forum section trying to explain to everybody that they had started it. Yeah, it wasn't in 21 or 22 or 22, 23, but he has tried to explain that numerous times, and I think still most people just didn't quite get it. Even when this news came out from Colt today, then you have a lot of the questions. Well, what about, I would think if you're a Baylor fan, you can ask the questions all you want. That's great. It's the team you love. Just enjoy the fact it's now there with what Colt is reporting. Jeremy will come on the show Monday to answer a lot of our questions we have for him. Like, for example, Dave Aranda. I would believe that Dave Aranda is one that was very much wanting everybody to have the same amount of money and that nobody was higher or than anybody else. I'm not saying that he doesn't understand the value or in that what was used earlier, fair market value, but I got a feeling Dave Aranda wanted everybody, no matter who you were, to have the same amount of money because of that team aspect. That may not be working. We don't know. Also, does this mean that this is also now they're going to give Dave even more of an opportunity to get this right with possible staff changes? Or is this also they've not sure what they're going to do with his future, but no matter what, whoever is the head coach, Aranda or otherwise, will now have this whatever it is, NIL, to deal with.
Well, look, if you're going to have a team full of 85 players that all think they're worth the same amount, then you're going to have a problem. I mean, anyway, like you want to set a baseline there.
Well, they're not dumb. Like you said, the backup guard, Craig, knows his value compared to Monterey Baldwin or whoever.
Yeah, but, look, there are, do you think that just as Alabama last year where everybody knew Bryce Young or Caleb Williams right now, there are really good big money players at USC, but do any of them, are they like sitting around their dorm room thinking like, man, I'm worth as much as Caleb? Like, no, like the smart ones aren't, and the ones that think that are dumb and they're going to have a problem wherever they go. So yeah, I think that some of that, like I get wanting everybody to have the same baseline and that makes it fair because you all start out the same. This is not the pros. There's not like recruiting is not the draft, right? So, the fifth round draft pick and the first round draft pick have different values on where they're drafted, but there does need to be some like, well, you got offers from this school and financial offers from here to be competitive in the marketplace. If you want the guys who are like Torian York that you lost to A&M, you're going to have to pay him what A&M's paying him. Bottom line.
Yeah, I think that's a nice idea that you'd pay everybody the same, but I can see in a half a second why that would be problematic. Mm-hmm. And I think when you watch them play, it almost makes me think, well, shoot, no wonder everybody's just kind of flatlined. They play the same. Like everybody's just kind of the same. So that just fits, I guess, across the board. But, that seems like an idea doomed to fail, especially when you're going to have people in the ears of Caden Jenkins or any Richard Reese. You're not playing like, hey, here's $10,000 a semester or whatever. That's an easy picking right there. Oh, they're paying you. You're getting paid the same as the center, and you've got 8 touchdowns on the year. Tell you what, we don't have those rules. We'll give you $25,000. So, yeah, that seems like something that is a nice idea, but it's not really realistic in the grand scheme of college football. And so that's that's something obviously to correct. Like we know Texas Tech, how they pay their offensive linemen. There's a big announcement about that. Texas, when they started offering offensive linemen money, or Texas Tech was actually like the team-wide thing, even walk-on. So we've heard those types of stories. We've heard nary a peep out of Baylor. I mean, they're a private institution, so they don't really talk money anyways, but I'm curious to see how open they will be with this. So I guess we'll learn those questions.
The school can't be, but the collective can be.
Right, but
much
I'm talking
more
in general about the programs that they are announcing and letting it be known that they're having this money available to spend on players. Like, that's not something that they were shying away from when the headlines were out there. So, yeah, it's not announced by the school, but it's basically promoted by the school.
Mac has told us how many times that they were about to make that change. I think still everyone thought it was going to be 2 or 3 weeks ago. Hold on, let Craig finish. Yeah. But it does. I'm telling you right now, it's on the verge of being in overdrive.
Okay, well, that's great. I guess we'll see when it happens then. But, I mean, good that they're working on it and good that they're trying to get their ducks in a row here, and hopefully it helps whoever it needs to help here.
One of the things I've done just since all this came about is when you hear about collectives, I'll go follow them on social media because I want to see how they talk about things. And when if you follow some of USC's collectives or FSU or Georgia or whoever, whenever, if Brock Bowers signs a deal with them and they get a deal for Brock Bowers, they tell you about it. That I've not seen any of that from
Baylor. They promote it.
Yeah, they promote it, which is the point of name, image, and likeness.
Yes.
And so that's where Baylor, to me, has been, because none of their fans know. That's the thing. None of this needs to be a secret. This is not the old days. And you need to make sure it's not a secret because you're going to have old guard fans that will think this didn't seem right to me. And well, it's not wrong. There's things that they can change about it, and to make it better for everyone involved, but it's not against the rules anymore. So if all the people you're recruiting against, or every time that, an NIL collective is going to sign somebody to a deal, are going to say a Torian York, congratulations, here's his deal with College Station Motors. You've got to do that
They
stuff.
do some of that. There's some of that, but this is so few and far between.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's, treated like it's not a big deal. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Let's see what they do here. That's great. They're working on it. It sounds all well and good. And so, yeah, like I said, hopefully it's something that helps the program. I mean, I don't think that's their only issue, but it's a start. And, how involved is the Dave Aranda side of things and what's the long-term plan, and I guess we're going to get those answers in the next few days, so that's good for them.
Again, Jeremy Fudge on Monday. Not sure about with next week being a holiday week about Mac Rhodes on Tuesday. He can't say too much about it, but Colt did a great job today popping that story. And here's one of the other parts that he said in this. This change, I was told, is for the long-term improvement of the football program, was made for the immediate health of the program. The move is not made with any specific player in mind. Understanding the market value for individuals will always fluctuate. The change will elevate total payouts for all scholarship players and allow for a much higher ceiling for those players who have valuations on their NIL. I do know this, that Caden Jenkins has been, no question, people have contacted him as his name is one of them. He's not, like Craig said, a Thorpe Award winner, but that might have also been a part of like, okay, wait a minute, we're already struggling here. The last thing we need to do is lose. And that doesn't mean they won't lose anybody anyway, depending on what they do with the coaching change and or what this means to stabilize and also increase the talent on the roster. Now, Jeff Traylor, this from Kirk Bowles of the Austin American-Statesman, interviewed with A&M. It all depends on who you listen to or who you also watch, that there might have been others who were interviewed. But Jeff Traylor, who's at UTSA, interviewed by A&M. If they had not reached out to him, I'll say this, if Dave Aranda remains at Baylor, good for him. And if they feel like that's the right decision, that's great. But if they were to open up and they didn't contact Jeff Traylor, they would be foolish not to do so. Also, UTSA is playing tonight against USF. It will be the last home game for Frank Harris, their 6-year senior quarterback, who, of course, has had a great career with the Roadrunners. There's also that Pac-12 game, but UTSA on display tonight on ESPN2.
Yeah, that's the game, Pac-12, but that Brando's doing, by the way. Talked about it the other day when he was on the show. I think Jeff Traylor, and A&M fans may feel different all over the map, but I think he's the dude you got to go and get if you're A&M. Like they've done so much with splashy, let's go get this and that, and you've got someone who can go in and recruit East Texas really well, essentially own it. He can kind of have that part of the state. He can probably put a nice little fence around Houston for A&M as well, which is one of the we've talked about this all the time. If you told recruiters like, give me 5 cities you want to go to, Houston's in every single one of them, that they'd want to go to. So not to mention what national capabilities he'll have recruiting at Texas A&M that he necessarily wouldn't at UTSA. He's a really brilliant coach. He's adaptable. He's always looking at the angles of modern college football, and giving him those resources there would be a good thing. I don't know if anybody ever can win the national championship at Texas A&M, but anybody in the world, anybody in this room could be head coach and go 8-4. I think Jeff Traylor could improve on that because seemingly everybody who goes there is 8-4.
I would think, Craig, if you asked Jeff Traylor this question about, hey, what is going on? What you can say? I bet he would probably say, we need to go win one for Frank Harris tonight inside the Alamo Dome.
Yeah, he's not going to say anything about A&M. I mean, that would be completely out of character, and it wouldn't really be appropriate. And I don't think if anybody had their way, this would really be out there. Maybe there's some part of the A&M mind or Jeff Traylor's agent that wants that out there, I suppose. But, he's going to be focused on UTSA. That's the one thing that we can say for sure. And at the same time, I mean, we know that UTSA has a certain ceiling, and he's been there longer than probably a lot of people would have been if they had potentially some of the opportunities he may have had over these past few years. But he's built it up. He's turned it into a strong program. He's had some, guys that have gone on to the NFL. He's had some guys who've had great careers, and they've won a lot of games, and they've been in a lot of big games and, played tough with a lot of big teams. So he's checked a lot of boxes in his time in San Antonio. I think just the kind of old school East Texas, just football coach kind of personality that he has would fit very well with Texas A&M. He would be somewhat of a splashy hire, not nationally, but I think that enough people in this region would definitely feel like that was a splashy hire, and not to mention like in Arkansas they would, because they know him from his time there at Arkansas, and he's been around the block. He's been around the SEC. He's been around the Big 12. He knows the area. He knows the football around here, and he can coach. So my first thought was, would he be able to – I don't know the relationship because it just ended last year, but would he go and get Will Stein back from Oregon because – he just left UTSA to go to Oregon, and if you want to make a big splash, we'll go get the guy who's leading the Oregon offense right now, bring him back. You've already worked together, and boom, there you go with Texas A&M on offense. But that's just a thought that crossed my mind. I don't know, what the Will Stein line of thinking is, but that would be an immediate ooh, that would be fun. But yeah, that would be a great hire. I feel like they're going to probably wrap this up pretty quickly because of the recruiting season, and so interesting that he's out there. But let's find out, I guess, who these others are. But if they were to announce him tomorrow, I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd be like, yeah, that's a smart decision by Texas A&M.
If you're an Aggies fan or a Houston fan, if that ever pops, or a Baylor fan, most everybody knows the Jeff Traylor story from coaching at Big Sandy, then assistant coach at Jacksonville, then taking over Gilmer, his alma mater, and turning them into a state power. He was at Texas under Charlie Strong. He was at SMU, Arkansas, and now, of course, recently has been the head coach for UTSA. Here's somebody that is not a coach. He is no longer on the Michigan staff. Linebackers coach has been fired by Michigan. Today, linebackers coach fired because, and basically if you look at this, Chris Partridge, from various reports of a lot of the national writers and even those who are in Michigan or in Ann Arbor, he was trying to cover some things up. Whether or not he was a part of the sign-stealing scam or whatever, or controversy, I don't know. But Michigan released a statement that bottom line said, we told everybody to not have any conversations whatsoever with anybody about anything NCAA investigation. Apparently they have proof that he didn't keep his mouth shut. He is no longer on the Michigan football staff.
Yeah, there's a lot of negativity. Sign-stealing scandal and all this notwithstanding, there's a lot of negativity around Michigan right now, and Ward Manuel's got to get that cleaned up. Whatever it is, they've got to put some sunlight on some things, and you've got an offensive coordinator fired for computer access crimes. You've got this sign-stealing scandal. You've got the NCAA investigation into Harbaugh and some improper recruiting during COVID. You've got now Chris Partridge and all of that. There's a lot of heat around Michigan right now, and Ward Manuel's job needs to be to cool that down and get it cleaned up. But it is a new story every week with Michigan, and just got to wonder, again, to me, how long is Jim Harbaugh really there? Because it would probably be better for both sides if he went to the NFL and then they could wash their hands of it and to just wait for the NCAA to drag its feet through, adjudicating whatever's going to happen and then worry about it later.
This is all just made up conspiracy by Ohio State fans. Yeah, I mean, there's something every day, it seems like. He got fired for a very specific reason. From the language Michigan used in the announcement. As we discussed today, the university has received evidence that you have failed to abide by the university directive not to discuss an ongoing NCAA investigation with anyone associated with the Michigan football program or others, and as a result has determined that you have failed to satisfactorily perform your duties. So there's that part of the announcement that was made on his firing, and then you had the I guess information that came from some of the Big Ten interviews that were a part of that as well, according to Pete Thamel, that played into this decision. So, they make a move there, and there's the whole Uncle T thing that was out there from Wetzel and Dellinger as well. So this just keeps stacking up on one another and certainly raises your eyebrows a little bit, makes the whole nobody knew anything that matters, narrative a little bit perplexing.
Or agreeing to the suspension and getting the hell out of the...
Yeah, that was nothing to see here. So, every day goes by, it just seems a little fishier. Although we all kind of smelled something stinking from the very beginning with this. We just don't know how many layers there are to it. But, this is starting to peel back a lot of layers. And This was an interesting choice today, and you just wonder, who was he talking? Was he talking to players? Was he talking to who? And how do they come about finding it? I guess it was part of the investigation is how. But, that's very interesting news out of Ann Arbor, which we've been saying a lot here lately.
All right, now our guest list right off the top in the next segment. Dr. James Hurley is the president of Tarleton State. Remember the story earlier this week? James Madison, Jacksonville State, Tarleton State all denied their waivers. So we know the story behind James Madison and Jacksonville State trying to become bowl eligible. What is the story at Tarleton State? They're FCS, but there's a story there. Their Dr. James Hurley, the president, have questions for him. What had they been not promised, but what is some of what has been going on the last 3 or 4 years as they made this transition, and what made them think that perhaps they could get the waiver? That and more. Grayson Grunhafer, Josh Neighbors, Taylor McCarg, Stephen Johnson on TCU, our college football pick'em. We did that yesterday, but we'll look at all the games at 5 o'clock today. Sam Bradshaw, Paul's Top 5. Thank you for everyone who's a part of any part of what you do, watching us, listening to us, the chat room and more. And this is 365 Sports.
You don't want to miss our best price deals during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels. This month, you can save big on the truck you've been looking for, like the new 2023 Rams. Shop our great selection of inventory in-store or online today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue. Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one, commercial, farm and ranch, or residential. Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
So earlier this week, we discovered and the latest waiver denied. James Madison, Jacksonville State, Tarleton State. Made me wonder, okay, I know what James Madison and also Jacksonville State are doing, but how did this affect Tarleton State? Well, they're pretty good. Todd Whitten is their head coach and has been. We've had him on this show. But they were wanting to be a part of the postseason this year. And they've been a part of that transition period. Dr. James Hurley, president of Tarleton State University, joins us, 365 Sports with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Dr. Hurley, thanks for your time. So this was you saying you've done everything, crossed all of the boxes or checked all the boxes and should be allowed to play now? Is that kind of the basis of your, I guess, what you wanted?
Yeah, well, first, Smokey, thank you so much for allowing me to share kind of why and our reasoning behind the waiver request. And in fact, this is our second waiver request. We asked something similar last year and asking for permission to allow all of our teams to play. Part of that is you alluded to. We think we're very good in all aspects, not just football, but across the board. We've had the highest APR, which is the academic progress rate. For back-to-back years, we've had the highest APR in the history of reclassifying institutions in the country. And so not only are our student athletes performing on the field and in the courts, they're also performing in the classroom. And so collectively, we felt like that we have checked every box to your point. And in fact, just less than a month ago, the NCAA had their site visit on campus, in which that's led by external administrators from across the country, along with guided by NCAA vice presidents and reps, et cetera. This is the last phase as you exit the reclassification process and kind of enter into this full reclassified Division I status. They were here last month, had zero findings, as in none, and had some really incredible remarks. And the chair of the committee said, of all the years that he's chaired or served on a committee, and that's been many, this has been the most prepared institution to transition not only from Division II to FCS, but we are FBS ready.
So, I mean, this is just from me, the outside looking in, Dr. Hurley, in that it seems to be that the reason that they've denied all of your waivers is, but that's the rule. And they're not allowing for all the things that you said, and the rule seems to be in place to protect the people who would be on the bottom end of those test scores, so to speak, that you guys have passed with flying colors, and they're allowing for any nuance or bending to, if you guys are going to do it in 6 months anyway, and you're ready, what's the difference now?
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul. One of the things I want to be very clear and transparent, and I have been from day one, I do believe in a process. I do believe that a transition period needs to be in place for any institution that's making the transition from Division II to FCS, and certainly from FCS to FBS. Now, that transition being 4 years, and let's think about this, that means an entire cohort of student athletes would willingly, I understand this, willingly come to an institution and participate. And we hear all the mantras of athletics, blood, sweat, and tears, et cetera, and that's true. But the enormous amount of time and dedication to promoting your university, and our university, in this case, Tarleton State University, but yet they will never have an opportunity. An entire cohort of kids will never have an opportunity to play for a championship. When we know, in fact, 2 years ago, we were more than prepared. We met the academic standards. We met the budget standard. We exceeded those. We exceeded the academic standards. Paul, we have one of the top 3 largest FCS budgets in the country. We've invested millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into athletics facilities over the last 4 years. So we feel like that we have done everything and beyond what they ask. I understand there are checks and balances in place to ensure that teams are prepared. But for those, what we were asking for was just to allow our student athletes to compete for championships. And not even asking for the 4-year waiver. We were just asking for the NCAA to allow our student athletes to play for a championship. We were not asking for the compensation. We did not want a single penny from the NCAA distribution. We simply wanted our student athletes and our coaches to be allowed to play for the championships. That's it. That's all we asked for.
And so, Dr. Hurley, what is that response typically like? I mean, we see the headline eventually when the news starts to spread of, hey, the NCAA has denied Tarleton State or denied James Madison. But what's that conversation like behind the scenes, and how does that go down?
Well, obviously very cordial. We've been in lockstep with the NCAA, and Troy Arthur, with our vice president liaison, a wonderful gentleman's gentleman. And I want to be also very clear. We are not threatening to sue the NCAA. I know there's some rumors that James Madison may consider that option, and if that's what they feel like they should do that. We are not. We're simply going to take the high road. We were told no, and we're going to continue to ask, and we're going to continue to put forth our best argument and simply stating the facts, all the things that I laid out before you. We've had an incredible amount of national support. As you can imagine, a lot of casual fans across the country that didn't know so much about Tarleton State. Well, they know Tarleton State now, and they are rallying around us because they too see that this is somewhat an archaic rule. In fact, it's not always been 4 years. It's only been the last 12-ish years. I don't hold me to that number, but 10 to 15 years where it was moved from a 1 year to a 2 year to a 4 year. And no one can give us a reason why this arbitrary 4 year number. So we've had tremendous support across the country, a lot of love mail from casual fans that just love railing against the NCAA.
Did anyone at all during the process, after you began the 4 year transition period, ever give you the inclination you could get it waived earlier than the 4 years?
Yeah, we felt very confident that when we started this process, and let's not forget, I don't think any of you, and I'm a big fan of what you all do, and I want to say thank you for promoting universities, intercollegiate athletics. You promote student athletes, you promote the coaches, you understand how much time and dedication goes behind that. And I just want to say, as a university president, we appreciate what you do for young people and our coaches. So with that being said,
thank you.
We were not necessarily directly by the NCAA, but we were led to believe that they were reevaluating the process from Division II to FCS, and also the transition from FCS to FBS, which would have been maybe reduced from 2 years to 1 year, 4 years to 2 years. During that process, we had a change in leadership at the NCAA. President Emmert retired. We've had President Baker in. I want to be clear, there have been no promises, but lots of discussion around, yes, if we put forth the right information, there's a chance that the NCAA Division I Council and other committees would look at this very favorably. And then the Constitution amendment occurred, and then the Transformation Committee, and all those types of things happened. I don't think any of us would argue that intercollegiate athletics today is vastly different than when we started this process in October of 2019. Things have changed. Some would say for the better, some would say for the worse, but they have indeed changed. And we feel like that the rules should also reflect the changes that have occurred across intercollegiate athletics. And again, I want to be clear. All we asked for was access for our student athletes to championships. We didn't want a cut of the money. We didn't even want the process to amend, so to speak. We just simply wanted our student athletes to be able to compete for championships.
Dr. James Hurley, President, Tarleton State University, with us on 365 Sports.
So do you guys feel that in the long, like, even though the ruling's been made, like in the long run, that maybe you have made hopefully positively enough strides to where schools going through this they might change the rules and amend them to make up for, again, like you said, the modern times of the NCAA and not the how they used to be times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will always beat that drum for schools to come after us. I'm not a leader that believes that just because we had to do something a certain way that everyone else has to do it the same way. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And when you look at, let's take our football program, because that's primarily based upon this waiver and this conversation. Our football team, if you look at 3 polls, the CFP poll, we're ranked 16th in the country. We're 22nd in the Sports Illustrated, and we're 23rd in FCS Nation. So they take the top 24 teams. How can you tell a group of student athletes that's earned one of those top 24 slots, 8-3? One of our losses was to FBS Texas Tech. We're top 15 in the country in offense and 19th in the country in defense. We've done everything that they've asked us to do on and off the field. And 4th in the nation in fan support. We average around 20,000 fans per game. All those stakeholders that believe, and our students that support this program, for the NCAA to continue not to allow these student athletes and fans and others to be rewarded for investment and doing things the right way, it's pretty disheartening. But I'm going to continue to, again, beat that drum for those that follow us, because I think this is just an atrocious rule. And I understand rules are in place, but every single day we amend rules. We amend rules in Austin, and we amend rules in Washington, D.C. And I think that's part of the evolution of being part of the greatest country in the world. That's what democracy is about.
In the last 5 years, Todd Whitten, the football program, has won more games combined among anybody, Division I and Division II, whatever levels. In the state of Texas, they have been very successful. I mentioned we've had Todd on this show. Let me ask you this. Is there any concern at all of you speaking out against the NCAA that could come back to hurt you? And my other question, when did this transition rule actually ever begin?
Well, and that's a good question. The transition has been in place for 25 plus years, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
But the years have varied. It's not always been 4 years, right? It used to be 1 year. It used to be 2 years. We've had institutions like the old David Lipscomb and Belmont University that went straight from NAIA to Division I. We also have presidents where Liberty made the transition from FCS to FBS without conference affiliation. So they've somewhat picked and choosed along the way what rules would apply to a certain group of individuals. In terms of speaking out against the NCAA and what ramifications would occur, I'm not railing against the NCAA. I'm railing against a rule that's been in place, and I'm railing against a group of individuals that would not consider allowing an institution that has checked all their boxes. We didn't ask them to amend a single box. So all the parameters that they've set forth in which we had to meet, the metrics, if you will, we've accomplished those metrics. The outcome was the distribution. The outcome was Division I status. The outcome was the ability to play for championships. We asked them to reconsider the outcomes. But in terms of the standards in which we were measured, Smokey, we've never asked them to amend those standards. We've lived up to those standards.
By the way, everybody know who they play to open up next year? Baylor. Tarleton State opens up at McLean Stadium against Baylor.
And I want to say something about you made a comment about Todd Whitten. For those that don't know Todd Whitten, he is an exceptional football coach, one of the best in the country, and he's a better person. He makes sure that these young men walk across that stage, they graduate, and they become better men that go out into society and make a positive impact on this world. That's the type of program we're leading. That's why I believe, as president, I have to stand up for Coach Whitten and his program and do as much as I can to give them an opportunity to play at the highest level, because they've earned that right, Smokey.
Yeah, he graduated from a pretty good place, too, at Stephen F. Austin.
Dr. Hurley, I know that, schools are famous for certain things, and you guys have, in any educational discipline that you specialize in, you've got a lot of professionals. But if somebody asked me on the surface what you guys specialize in our profession, I've met more football and basketball coaches.
Yep.
You guys grow coaches there. I mean, there's as much coaches coming out of Stephenville as there are cattle. It's ridiculous how many coaches that you guys grow and do a great job of doing that.
Well, I say this is a great place because we were founded in 1899 by John Tarlton as an agricultural school, right? And we weren't even a college, to provide opportunity for the youth. His words then. Of course, we've evolved to almost 18,000 students and very different today. And we have students that are 16 all the way into their 80s, but then youth of North Central Texas. And I would agree with you. One of the things that drew me here 5 years ago, my wife, to move our family here, it was that sense of people and place. We're known as an agricultural college, no doubt. We're the largest non-land grant college of ag in the country. We're 1 in one ranking and 2 in another, but somewhere along the line, we're 1.5, right? And you're right. We produce tremendous. We have one of the largest programs, kinesiology and exercise science in the state. We do a great job of preparing young people for careers that meet marketplace demands. And when you have an athletic director who's retiring this year, Lon Reisman, who's been absolutely incredible for us during this transition, he's been here for 30 plus years. He ensured that we always, we're always going to do things the right way when it comes to preparing student athletes.
Had a few people in the chat room that we have that said they did not know as much about you as they now do, and they a lot to say that you should be given the chance. Does Tarleton just want to go to a bowl game or be a part of the 12-team playoffs?
Well, at the FCS level, it's a 24-team playoff. We just want access to be able to play for that 24-team championship. And it's very much, Smokey, like the FBS is getting ready to transition to a very similar format, a 12-team.
Yep.
Just double that number. It's more regionalized at the FCS level, and the culmination, that championship game, is right here in Frisco, Texas.
Yep.
We have won, I think, the last 4 games of the season. I can't remember, but we do not have a senior starter on offense. We only have, I think, 4 starters on defense that are seniors. So we have a very young sophomore and junior-laden team. And I believe we would really make a deep run in this championship just watching this team this year and watching how they've grown. And under Coach Witten's leadership, Coach Witten is a winner, and he's always going to figure out how to win. But back to your point, not only do we produce excellent athletes, we produce great rodeo stars down here. We're the
Absolutely.
capital.
That's right.
We're the rodeo capital and the cowboy capital of the world for a reason.
I told you.
And here at the,
I'm sorry.
Here at the university, we've won 38 national rodeo collegiate championships, more than any other university.
I mentioned this to you earlier, and we appreciate your time because I know you got to get on the road to go to a game. But I asked this when we were talking about James Madison, Jacksonville State, Tarleton State, Kennesaw State's another one. But here's what I said. You knew the rules when you went into it, right? You knew what the rules were. That doesn't mean, as you said, that they're not antiquated or they can't be changed. But I mentioned that yesterday, and somebody else in the chat room said, you knew the rules. So how do you answer that question?
Well, and that's true. That's a very valid point. That's why we are not going to choose, a lawsuit or the legal route. We're not asking to amend the standards within the rules, so to speak. It's really not a rule. It's just the metrics in which if you accomplish this, then the outcome is this, right? All we're asking is that one of the desired outcomes would be, or rewards, I should say, would be postseason play for all of our student athletes. We would argue the fact that we have completed the process. The NCAA site visit has occurred. The books are closed, so to speak. Their report is final. It is submitted to the NCAA. I've signed off on it. There were no amendments, no findings, a raving report. There's nothing else now we can do, Smokey, except wait and watch a calendar turn every month until June 1. And my question is, how fair is that to an institution? If they've been provided the test and they've passed the test as an academic, I'll use that example, and we've passed the test, then why should we wait for the results when we know we've met all the standards? So that's our argument. And then the second argument is back to my point. since 2019, I think that the intercollegiate athletic landscape has changed so drastically. And COVID had a big part of that, clearly, that I just think that things have changed. And I think that we should consider amending the outcomes, not amending the standards, but amending the outcomes.
By the way, one of the fastest growing comprehensive public universities, Dr. Hurley didn't share this with me. I had this 17,000 plus athletic budget of $25 million. One of the tops in the FCS. Construction on that new basketball arena for $120 million. I mentioned the wins and the losses. Backed by, which of the systems, the state system, the PUF schools are you a part of? Is it UT, A&M? Which one is that?
Yeah, so we're the second largest university in the Texas A&M system.
Okay.
And we have tremendous support from our Chancellor, John Sharp, and the Texas A&M Board of Regents. They have really been a catalyst to fueling our growth. We have a desire to become the state's next R1 FBS playing institution. I think we're well on our way, but tremendous. And we are, to your excellent point, we are part of the Permanent University Fund. So that's that oil fund, if you will, some people call it, that gives us additional resources for academic infrastructure. It's a real game changer for our university.
It's a pleasure to get to know you and I get to know you on the show. Also, thank you very much for when you have dropped in on us with what we try to do, covering it the right way, college football and the landscape. Dr. Hurley, thank you very much for your time with us, and good luck, and stay in touch. And maybe the next time we have you on, it's because even better news is coming your way.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all you do, and we look forward to seeing you all at Baylor next year.
Yes, sir. We will. We will see you there. Dr. James Hurley, Tarleton State University president. We'll have Grayson and then Josh and others. We're going to be about 10 minutes each way. We're okay with that. Well, what do you think? I'm the one that said, well, these are the rules. And then the rule was invented 25 or so years ago. It's like anything else. It's changed. And like he said, in the last 4 or 5 years alone, things have changed dramatically in college athletics.
And again, I think the rule needs to exist to make sure that you don't have people who don't check all the boxes just trying to run to the front of the line. Like that, it exists. There, again, we use the term, you hear it all the time, guardrails. Like, good that there's guardrails, but if you have somebody who's been well within them and is, again, like he said, just waiting for the calendar to turn, like, does it really make sense for you to enforce that rule when they've done everything you told them to do and it's arbitrarily, you're saying, well, we got to wait till June. Well, why? Well, that's the number we put up. Well, why? That's arbitrary. And that's the thing. So if all these schools, and all of them probably have different little things that fit in for their own arguments, but that's why you kind of need to look at the deeper thing other than like, well, it's just supposed to be 4 years, especially if I'm a lawyer for anybody else or representing you, like, we let Liberty run right through. Why? And the answer for Liberty is easy, and it's money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most eye-opening part as far as the Tarleton State goes is that they're not asking to play in a bowl game. Yeah. That they're just asking for money. They're just trying to play in a championship, which is, I think, what's probably lost and confusing when you just look at the bigger picture of the story is you just assume that that's what everybody's going for. And so enlightening to hear that they're not going to pursue anything legally because they're not, like he said, trying to go get money or trying to go force their way into a bowl situation. I do think that there needs to be a better answer than like, well, just because it's this way. I do think that after a while, that's kind of a lame answer. And if you're the NCAA, you should have something a little bit more substantial to that, especially if you now have multiple teams proving that that rule is not really as needed as maybe it was at one point in time. Mm-hmm. If you've got, it's not just James Madison. You got like a line of teams now forming that would like to be able to bypass this thing. So maybe that says that rule's not exactly fresh enough anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's, where they could say, well, you know what? You bring up a good point. At least like be responsive instead of just like, well, that's because it's that way. It's like when the parent just has no real reason for why they're doing anything. It's just, oh, well, just because of the way it is. And so, I think that's, a valiant fight on their part to try and see if they can't change some things. It doesn't sound obviously all that promising, but I think that they have the right idea in mind and the right heart in it. And again, it's not about money or glory. It's about just trying to get your players into a championship game that they've earned their way into. So yeah, I'm all for that tweak to it. The other one I do think is more about, well, that is the rule and you'd have to go about changing it. So, let the debate continue, but I see their point of view a lot clearer now.
A lot of good discussion from a lot of you in the chat room. Terry Fox, the reason for the rule is to discourage schools from transitioning to Division I. It's morally wrong. Paxton, something different. Love that interview. And thank you a lot. Katie Rader said, I didn't know that much about Tarleton State, but now you do. We appreciate it. And thank you to Dr. Hurley for being available to tell a little bit more in-depth background, even the process itself, as they have checked all the boxes. Good luck to them moving forward. Now, when we come back, we have Grayson Grunhafer. I'm going to ask him, and we will, about the new NIL discussion that Baylor is taking to a different level. Josh Neighbors on the Big 12 games, Taylor McCarg on the national games, and others. We're not done. Stephen Johnson on TCU hosting Baylor tomorrow. A lot to get to, and this is 365 Sports. I went on idealmri.com, their website. I have been a patient of theirs 4 different times, and I've had my shoulder, I've had my lower back, I've had my hip, and I've had my abdomen inside of their MRI machine. And I've discussed the story that I'm I'm claustrophobic on stuff like that, but I've never had an issue when I've gone inside that tube to get an MRI. The techs and specialists have always made me feel very comfortable. They ask me, what can they do to help me not feel so nervous or have anxiety? And it's worked every single time. I got spooked one time at a different place for an MRI, and it was not good. I was not going to get in it. And they have never had that problem with me. Providing convenient, luxurious experience, state-of-the-art technology. The scan will be read by a board-certified subspecialist and also never cost you, the MRI, more than $497. The average is $1,100. I highly recommend Ideal MRI. That's one of the notes on the website. Customer service, wonderful. And the first time I called to set up an appointment, extremely clean. The staff was friendly. I took by their business earlier this week, a large product of barbecue, and there's not a large staff, and man, they could not have been happier. They're good to me, good to them, they're good to us. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas Marketplace, just off I-35 in Waco.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgan Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgan Ford. Bird Colgan Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your
holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
Here we go, 365 Sports. Grayson Grunhaber, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst, college football analyst, joins us on the show. So, Grayson, the news that Colt had earlier today, you follow a lot of the recruiting, transfer portal, whatever. Baylor has an NIL in place as far as per player that's pretty equal and across the board. How much will the additional money for what is fair market value help them, and will it help them immediately?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that I think has been working towards this for a while, and it's absolutely massive for the entire football program. I mean, they absolutely needed something like this to occur. I think a lot of people, kind of made the assumptions that Baylor's NIL was not doing well, which simply was not true. Baylor just was divvying it out evenly across the board for the most part. And so now with these additional resources, I do think that it's going to pay huge dividends. And I mean, guys, we're at a time right now, as far as Baylor football goes, where there's a lot of question marks and a lot of things that have to be answered over the next, truthfully 2 weeks, maybe a month. Whether Dave Aranda is going to be the head coach, whether they're going to bring in a new coach, whether guys are going to enter the transfer portal, all of these questions. And I do think that this ability using NIL to potentially retain players, go out, add additional players who could mean a lot to the program next year and going forward, it's very, very important. And I definitely think it puts Baylor on an even better trajectory. I would have said, they're kind of in that middle tier of schools, which is where I would say most schools are. Outside of like the top 25, there are obviously schools with more resources, but just kind of that middle group is kind of where Baylor was, somewhere in there. I think they've kind of risen to maybe the upper middle tier of that group, which is really, really important in the new Big 12. And I think it makes them as competitive as any school in the Big 12 going forward.
Grayson, how much does the fact that some of the NIL that has been behind the scenes a little bit and not out in front and promoted hurt Baylor in recruiting?
I think it has to an extent, but I honestly wouldn't say that it's been something that's been huge against them, to be honest. I mean, they did a really nice job in the transfer portal as far as, getting guys that they needed, adding guys who are high quality prospects, either out of high school or out of college in the past year. It just, simply did not work out for them this year as far as meshing the transfers with the talent that was on campus. And so what's ended up happening is they've played a lot of young guys, and that's going to happen sometimes when you rely on the transfer portal, because it can pay huge dividends, but it can also have consequences for the depth of your roster and the long-term outlook of it. But I really don't think that, it being not vocalized has really impacted them at all. I would say it's impacted the fan base more than their actual, recruiting and transfer portal efforts. I think that this kind of false narrative that Baylor has no ability to compete NIL-wise has kind of been said a lot, I would say, and probably far too much than is worth. From the results that I've seen, I think it's been talked about far too much as a negative, as opposed to kind of where Baylor is, which is middle tier in NIL, and potentially changing that with this news.
So where does the recruiting class stand right now? It seems like with the season going the way that it has, that it's been there, but it's not a part of like the forefront of the conversation, which typically it would and should be throughout the years. You're building towards signing it. So here we are, and they're a month out or so. So where would you kind of say that all is in the grand picture of things?
Right. And I mean, this class was always going to be a small class. I think I've said that ad nauseum, and I know people don't want to hear that because you only want to look at rankings and you want to see Baylor being, top 25 or whatever expectations people have for them. And that's not going to be this class. This class is a smaller class. They landed a lot of guys that, again, they wanted in this class. I'm not going to sit here and say they've landed every single target because obviously that's completely not true. But, they got 14 commits. They have a good group, a lot of guys that have been locked in for a long time. And now as we kind of turn the corner to the end of the season, they have a couple spots remaining. But honestly, I really think the bulk of the effort this offseason, whether it's with Dave Aranda or a new coach, is going to be about the transfer portal. I do think you'll see maybe some shakeups if they bring in a new coach. Maybe they'll change up some things in this recruiting class some. But I think in general, the transfer portal is where Baylor's going to make up the ground they need to going into next season, which obviously is going to be very important, whether it's with Aranda or a new coach.
All right, so Grayson, I know you've seen Caden Jenkins on Twitter. Respect my decision. He has a family to take care of and all of that. And we see that a lot during times when players are being recruited and or when they're about to possibly enter the transfer portal. How much do you feel like the news today, not directly for Caden Jenkins, but the Caden Jenkins of the world, will now understand what Baylor can do for them a little bit more?
Right. And I think that this was something that had been in the works for a while. And obviously then you fast forward to, yesterday or 2 days ago when Caden, tweeted about that. And I think it caused a lot of people to be really scared about, what's going to happen with transfers, how many guys are going to leave. And obviously we still have a ways to go. And, anytime there's a coaching change, there usually is a shakeup of the roster. And then, of course, if you have a bad season, there's sometimes a shakeup as well. But one thing that I continue to hear and I continue to emphasize is Baylor really, really, really wants to keep their young players. They want to develop this group. They want this group to elevate the program to a whole nother level. And Baylor's got to find a way to do that. And in order to do that, some of it's going to come down to NIL. And I think in this situation that you're referring to, it absolutely could have a massive impact on, whatever he releases later today or whenever he says something official. But I do think in general, once again, I feel pretty good about Baylor being able to keep the young guys that they want to keep. That doesn't mean that they're going to keep every single player on the roster or be able to, but I do think they're going to have a focus, and I definitely think Caden Jenkins is going to be a huge part of that focus.
Grayson, this weekend against TCU, your assessment of these two teams at this moment right now, heading into a game that has far less juice in it than any Baylor-TCU game has for the last few years.
Right, and I mean, coming into this matchup, I know people want to say how bad Baylor is, and I mean, I completely understand it. Baylor has not been good this year. It's been a really, really bad year, but at the end of the day, you are what your record says, and what TCU's record says is they're only one game better than Baylor so far this year. And TCU still's got something to play for. They got a chance to make a bowl game. They got a chance to maybe get back into the good graces as far as what they did a year ago, but they kind of have an uphill battle to climb because they got Baylor and then they got to go to Oklahoma next weekend. So they still got some work to do, and they haven't really looked like a team recently that's really showed me anything of a bowl team. They look more like a team that's fringe bowl team that's not going to make a bowl, and for that reason, this game is somewhat winnable for Baylor. Now, things are going to have to go right because, simply put, Baylor's faced some teams that run an offense similar to TCU's. When you look at Texas and you look at Texas State, to a lesser extent, Texas Tech, and those teams had a lot of success against Baylor's defense. So there's going to have to be a lot of soul searching here. They're going to have to dig deep if they're going to want to come away with a win. But I think the most important thing here is, will Baylor compete or not? Because we saw against Kansas State, they competed for about 10 minutes in that game, and then it just completely went sideways. Going into this matchup, are they going to be able to create their own breaks, create the turnovers that they need to, convert in the red zone, which they haven't done all year, convert on third down, which they haven't done all year. Those are all going to be very important things. But I think really at the end of the day, it's going to come down to which team wants it more. And then you're just going to kind of look at it and go, okay, if TCU plays their best game and Baylor plays their best game, TCU's probably going to win. But if Baylor plays their best game and TCU just plays a good or just above average game, then I definitely think Baylor can go on the road and find a way to win this game. Am I predicting that? No, I'm predicting TCU to win this game, but I do expect it to be pretty close.
Were you on the naming committee for the Bluebonnet Battle?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, Craig, we talked about it this week and on the Bearcast, and my goodness. I mean, you mentioned it perfectly. Could you have gotten any lazier, with this decision? I just felt like this rivalry does mean so much to both these programs, and it's one of four, rivalries that are going to stay in the new Big 12 for the foreseeable future. And to have a name like that is just pretty ridiculous. I will not be calling it that. It is going to continue to be called the Revivalry by me.
Grayson, thank you very much. Grayson Grundhafer, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst, co-host of the Bearcast with Craig on Tuesdays, and also football analyst. When we come back, Josh Neighbors on the Big 12 schedule in those games. Then Taylor McCargan's in the national games, and his thoughts about Michigan, the latest with the linebackers coach Partridge being fired. Much to get to. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. As you get older, Father Time can take control of things inside and outside of your body. You know that if you're old enough. But this is not when you think about testosterone level dropping for those who are 50 plus, although that is truly more likely. Could be in your 30s, could be in your 40s. You never know. If you have had a lack of energy that is different, if you've had a lack of the sleep habits are just not the same, and you're just, and then your sex drive is not the same, then maybe it's your testosterone. Doesn't mean it is, but it could be. Dr. Kent Petty and his staff can set you up to get your blood work. Contact them on the website, pettyclinicalot.com, or call the number, tell them I sent you. They will set you up to get your blood work. They get the results, and if your testosterone level is too low or just a little bit low, Dr. Petty can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be at pettyclinicalot.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, this 4 o'clock hour continues. Josh Neighbors, 365 Sports. He joins us here every Friday. Craig and I were on the road traveling with high school football for 3 months, and he started this segment with Paul. Not that he hadn't been a part of the show before, and he joins us on 365 Sports. So, Josh, let's go through the Big 12 and your thoughts. Let's start with the game in Ames, Iowa. Iowa State, a team that can be a tough out, but still some vulnerabilities, and UT trying to clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game.
Good to be with you guys as always. So, yes, obviously with this game, the big story is this. Texas is better than Iowa State. They've got a better team. They got better personnel. They are more complete. The last few weeks we've seen it with Texas, though, is that they have continued to shoot themselves in the foot. In previous seasons, they've done that and lost the games. This year, they're still winning. And the thing is, hey, if you let Iowa State hang around in that environment, they might make you pay. So K-State was getting dogged in that game against Texas. They had no business being close. Well, that game went to overtime, and it was a play away from going K-State's way. I mean, TCU got completely outclassed, but Texas had to salt that game away with a final drive last week. It had no business being close. You know, I think this Texas team, years back, you feel good about them, but still, like, they are still surviving. The one thing that's hard to square that with is the fact that nobody can run the ball on them. There's nobody that can do it, and I doubt Iowa State's offense can because they have not run the ball effectively all season. So I think the big thing, I heard a good breakdown from the folks at Cover 3 saying, hey, man, like, don't even run on first down. Like, you might be able to try. There's some good looks, but 2nd and 8, 3rd and 8, that's not where you win this game. Like, you need to create some advantages, and that's where the secondary is weak. And also, this is a environment at Ames where Iowa State's won this game. Matt Campbell has won this game. Now, not the same cast of characters, obviously, but the fact that they're a bowl team already, and the fact that this spread's only 7.5, I think it tells you about where this Iowa State team is, and also how Texas has not been able to close out games despite being the better team essentially in every game they've played this year.
Josh, does Rocco Becht have to have his signature game this year for them to win?
Yes, to keep this thing Italian, and he needs to have his Joe Pesci and Goodfellas this weekend. It's also Scorsese's birthday, so shout out Marty. Yes, he needs to have his Joe Pesci Goodfellas performance. Once again, like, as a guy who was not supposed to be the quarterback, and for him to be as good as he's been this year, and it seems like they're working on some targets, developing some guys, like, really impressive, but. When I think about quarterback performances against Texas this year, when were they threatened? Donovan Smith, tremendous performance with Houston, huge threat. Dylan Gabriel, game of his life. They end up winning that game. So, and the other games have been threatening too, but like really the games that were close, because Texas hurt themselves a bit in the Houston game, but honestly, like, Houston just started scoring on them. I think that they were able to exploit that secondary. So you need to have, game of your life type stuff from a guy like a Rocco Becht. And I mean, he hasn't played that many games, but we've seen Texas enough to know, hey, you got to bring that 110% your best effort to have a chance to beat them.
Josh, despite the debacle in Orlando last week, Oklahoma State still controls their ability to get into the Big 12 championship game. Need to beat Houston. Houston had a big fall off after the win over Baylor. So both these teams sort of limping into this one down in H-Town. Your thoughts on just where both of them kind of find themselves now, and particularly Oklahoma State, the ability to bounce back?
Houston has been banned from all of my gambling apps. I'm done. I'm just over it. And that's the problem for Dana. Like, I just don't know which group's going to show up. The K-State game, you kind of knew, right? After kind of just the Herculean effort, like it was just a bad spot for them. But losing to Cincinnati, seriously, after that, and then now they're back home. And I'm really wondering about his future. Do they give him the pass, first year, new conference, whatever? And, he talked this week about how many calls Golden's been getting. I don't know if that's a good idea, especially because, if I'm him, I might leave and go somewhere else. So I don't know what that mindset is. But the big thing for Oklahoma State is they don't have a ton of paths to victory. They need to be able to run the ball effectively against teams. Now, Houston has not shut a lot of teams down, but UCF had neither. Weather did help, obviously. But you kind of saw it last week. Oklahoma State has to pack it up and go home if things don't go their way, which is kind of concerning for them. I think it's a very, very good test mentally for them. They do have the better football team overall. There's some players on that Houston team, especially on the offensive side, but they need to control the clock and basically squeeze the life out of the game and say, all right, Houston, you need to make sure you make the most of your opportunities in this game, because Houston's been so hit or miss. I feel like if you limit possessions, it's probably the best way to beat them. So I think it's what Cincinnati did a bit last week too. So that's kind of the diagnosis. Can Oklahoma State get back to what got them to this point in that winning streak?
Has your opinion changed about UCF after last week?
No, not at all. Because they've got playmakers. Good, you stop the run one game, but they haven't done it consistently. And the thing is, they're going to be better off. They're going to be better off when Plumlee leaves. The thing is, if they had a pure passer as their quarterback, they're probably in better shape, because the thing that this offense needs, they just need somebody to distribute the football to all of these guys. I mean, Townsend, Harvey, and Baker, these are legit players they have. So good for Gus at the complete dominant win. I'm happy for you, but I don't think my opinions really changed of them too much. I think they were due, not for a game like that, but just kind of we're at home, we're playing a good team, they're making mistakes, and our players, our athletes are capitalizing.
So with that in mind, UCF and those athletes heading to Lubbock, and Texas Tech suddenly finds itself in a very favorable position to make a bowl game, needing to win in their last two. Now, favorable, maybe that's too strong, because that last one is going to be a tough one at Texas. So this one's kind of a, hey, you should go ahead and win this and just, seal the deal here. But that's a tough team. UCF obviously has a little bit of confidence building. I just don't know about Josh, them going on the road to Lubbock. That's the part that kind of hangs up any upset potential for UCF here, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like Tech's chances at home. And it's funny, I mentioned this in my show, The Big 12 Watch, today, about how success is not linear. And so what made Mike Leach successful was the fact that week in and week out, his team, or, year in and year out, his teams were going to bowl games. That's really not been the case since Spike Dykes and Mike Leach. It's been a whole lot of up and down. And so I know everything was 8-5 last year. It was, a lot of momentum this year. But I was always wondering, I'm like, okay, can you all consistently win first and start building a better defense before we talk about you as a Big 12 title contender year in and year out? And so I think this game represents a really big opportunity for Joey McGuire's team to at least give themselves a chance to have a winning season and go to a bowl game. And you start stacking those on top of each other, I think in the new Big 12, good results will follow for Tech. The thing, too, for Tech they've done a really good job of is they passed the ball way too much earlier in the season. So they would go on these big runs, and then what would happen afterwards is they'd give the points back. The way they can run the football now is they can actually use a bit more of the clock. So, even if they aren't able to score, they're actually taking some more clock up, and all of a sudden, a 17-point lead doesn't evaporate in roughly 2 minutes, of game time. That's big for them. And Taj Brooks has been really good, and Cameron Valdez looks like he could be the next guy. So if they've got the stamina to keep running pace and to keep running the football effectively, let's see if UCF can do it back-to-back weeks in Lubbock on the road this time when the weather's not going to be like that it was like last week.
Josh, my last question is that of the 4 incoming teams, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and Brigham, BYU, I thought that BYU was probably more set for the wear and tear, the transition, or the attrition of the first year in the Big 12, but it looks like they're running out of gas. And I know Slovis is hurt too. Oklahoma's playing them this week. Is that what you see from the Cougars?
Yeah, I can't think about a game this year where I was super impressed with the way they play. I was impressed with their wherewithal against Arkansas.
Yeah.
But, like, what does BYU do well? And you look at the numbers, and they don't do anything particularly well this season. And that was the big problem for them. And so when I think about, like, these schools like Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and where they're located and their ability to build certain things, I'm wondering about what the identity of BYU is going to be. Can they be the team they were before, like really good quarter? Because the thing was the quarterback play this year has been inconsistent, but like, is this going to be an offensive line driven team? Run the football and then create turnovers? Like, what is BYU going to do well and carry identity wise? Or are they going to try to adapt what their roster is, and I'm not sure. Like, I think Stocky's a good coach, but Mike Gundy has been the one who, even with his stumbles, has done a great job of adapting his rosters in recent years to what they do really well. And so even though I think this Oklahoma State team gets outclassed a bunch, like they can still be in games if they're not making mistakes and beat teams like Oklahoma and beat teams like K-State because they run the football effectively. And also they can create some turnovers, and if they take care of the football, they're in good shape. Like, can BYU build towards that? Because, I don't feel like they're the better team in any game they play. They beat Tech this year, but they had a third-string quarterback, and they turned the ball over 5 times, and they beat them by 13 points. So, like, what are we supposed to take from that? And they were 5-2 at one point, right? They're now 5-5 and most likely staring down 5-6, and they might not make a bowl game. So, yeah, they're kind of the weak link out of the new 4. And the new 4 haven't been great either. I still think, like, they beat Cincinnati earlier in the year, but that was not a convincing performance at all.
Josh, I can't let you go without your thoughts on the WWE belt that's coming to the Big 12 MVP.
So people have been like up and down, like, hey, well, what are they doing here with this? College football is pro wrestling. I covered pro wrestling when I was at XM as an intern, and a little bit of a fan of it. Like, what is happening with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan? That is heel stuff. Mike Gundy is basically a WWE character, right? His I'm a man, I'm 40 is basically Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. Like, that is what college football really is. It's narrative driven. So I think this partnership, I'm not saying it takes them to the moon or anything, but like, it does make sense. Also, Endeavor did consult with the Big 12. Endeavor is the parent company of TKO, the holding firm, whatever you want to call it, for WWE and UFC. Hey, man, like, the idea of a Texas player, Quinn Ewers, holding up a championship belt as they win the Big 12 sounds terrible, but it also sounds like something straight out of Vince McMahon's head. And I think a little bit of that is good. I think the Big 12, once again, needs to find every single little thing they can to kind of lead into to get an advantage marketing-wise and all those places. So I think this makes sense as a potential marketing idea, and I like it. It could spice up the Big 12 championship game some, and I think the relationship too. I mean, college sports and pro wrestling, they are so much closer than I think people believe.
I just don't know how they're going to play a football game in a cage. I don't know how. I'm not sure
that's
how that's going to be. How do you punt? How do you punt?
Smokey, my idea was this: 14 coach. So they use at WrestleMania every year. They do a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. I want the 14 coach ladder match before the championship game, the Intercontinental belt. I'm worried about some of the older coaches, but like if they had that, my money's probably on Gundy. Like if you have, hey, which coach could climb a ladder and unhook the belt? I'm trying to think of who my number one would be, but like, Gundy, even though he's getting older, I just feel like it's his to lose. It's hard to go against him.
Aranda has the Stone Cold look, right, with the bald head. So there's a little bit of that.
I wouldn't bet against Kalani Sitake. He's
he's kind of muscular
dude. Yeah, I mean,
but he's also kind of a big dude, so getting up a ladder might be a little difficult. You got to take that into consideration. So
who has the most enemies too, right? Because you could get a situation where, hey, who's tipping the ladder over, right? Gundy probably has a lot of folks who want to tip the ladder over on him, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it would be maybe Venables this year too. He looks like he's in like pretty good shape.
I like the idea of Venables on one side and Sark on the other, and they're climbing up to both grab it, and then everybody else runs over and tips them over.
It'd be a classic spot. Unbelievable. Yes. There you go.
Yeah, you just made this WWE thing. Craig is a huge fan of wrestling for many, many years. You and him need to stay out of the same room, huh?
Or be in the same room to talk about it. I don't know if we want to avoid it if we're both fans, but yeah.
Hey, look, I think this week's show, though, with the WWE thing and also like the really weird rules clarification that once again, folks, like this is a marketing guy they hired to be the Big 12 commissioner. Yeah. He is not a college football fan. He does not pretend to be. All right. So like this is pure marketing. Was it a great week? No, but like I think we should kind of wait to cast stones, at least in the WWE thing, before we see how it goes.
By the way, your hair, which is like phenomenal, is what Paul's used to look like.
Thanks.
Really? Yeah. I mean,
and then he watched mid 2000s, late 2000s Florida State football.
Yeah. Paul used to have a tight look like that, that black Italian look,
Yeah, I did.
Am I right?
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah.
My mother, the Moretti family, it's her, and she gave me the great hair. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. What happens with Italians though, Josh, is it's there. And then it's not.
Yeah, it's done.
Like there's
mine's staying, Paul. Mine's staying.
I'm glad. I'm glad for you.
Are you sitting in front of your back fence or something?
We've given that backdrop.
Oh,
this is a backdrop that Brian Etheridge sent me.
It used to be right here
to use.
Have a great weekend. Great stuff, Josh. Appreciate your time. Appreciate that.
I'll try not to go 0-6 in my Twitter picks this week, so I stand on business. We'll see you back to basics. See you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Neighbors of 365 Sports.
Yeah, I think the WWE thing is some of the reaction to it has been just so dramatic and over the top by people, but I guess that's social media. Is everybody's got to be this is the worst thing or the best thing or whatever, and it's not lost on me that a lot of the energy is coming from people who aren't even going to be a part of it. Like, oh, thank God we're leaving the conference. It's like, oh yeah, that's so just you weren't fine with it, but now you're okay with it because it's a marketing thing, like he said. It's not as though it's anything other than that. You see at every pro sports celebration somebody with a championship belt. Major League Baseball, NFL, WNBA, NBA, NHL. They do belts for all of them. They have officially licensed belts. So they've been doing some of that crossover already. Now it's a little bit more in depth. But if somebody's just out there like in between timeouts, like, hey, here's Bianca Belair, or she's flipping the coin, like that's not that big of a deal. No. It's really not. So I think it's being blown way out of proportion. Now let's see what it looks like. Yeah. Maybe I'll change my mind on that. But I think it's been a little silly, especially when everybody and their mother in college football industry, especially the media, pretends or is a pro wrestling fan.
Yep.
But now suddenly it's like, oh, that's not cool. It's like every single one of you I see you mention pro wrestling at some point or another. And let's not act like we haven't seen Texas social media account. Here's The Undertaker at practice.
Yep.
Here's Mark Henry. Hey, Texas Tech, Ric Flair's here talking to, and all of that's part of
Michigan,
it. So,
but he's at Michigan.
He's at Michigan. He's at Tech. He's been at a lot of places that people need to stop bringing him around. But he's kind of a fan of everybody if you sign the right check. But my point being is that it is very much a pro wrestling crossover sport. So yeah, as long as they're not doing leg drops during the middle of the game.
Yeah.
Then a little marketing's fine.
Yeah, Ric Flair will come to you for the right check, and if you get him into the A boarding group on a Southwest flight.
Yes. He will be at Tarleton State next week if you want him to be, if they have the right check, yeah.
All right, we go from Josh Neighbors to Taylor McCarg of ESPN, color analyst, joins us on 365 Sports. Taylor, what was your reaction, not to Michigan accepting what was going to happen with Harbaugh, but today's news, a linebackers coach has been flat out fired because he did not obey with the rules of not talking about this with anybody, and he's gone. How deep then do you think this continues to go?
Yeah, I think Michigan accepting the 3-game suspension from the conference felt like the ultimate, okay, you got us, we'll take our 3-game suspension, we'll move on. And then it is interesting timing that immediately after that, Chris Partridge is fired, and now you have the reports that are being released of an Uncle T, the booster that is basically financing this because Connor Stallion was not sending in any sort of expense report, so someone was privately financing this. Look, we have talked about this a number of times over several weeks. I think there was clearly a line that was crossed here, but I got to be honest, I'm ready to move past it because it feels like This does not warrant the amount of time we collectively, all of us are having to spend on this. But, it is dominating headlines right now. My hope, honestly, is that over the next 2 weeks, we start to see upsets that shake up the top 8 or 9 teams, and that starts to dominate the headlines. But as it relates to Michigan, I did think it was interesting timing that Chris Partridge was let go after Michigan came to an agreement on, or decided that they weren't going to pursue pressing the Big Ten on the 3-game suspension in game for Coach Harbaugh.
Taylor, you mentioned those upsets. I would say the two with the biggest potential would be Iowa State and Texas, and then maybe more so with Oregon State and Washington. Who do you think is more vulnerable?
Yeah, I would say it's Washington, but they're actually not, according to Vegas. Oregon State is favored, right? So in terms of a poll standpoint and how things would shake out, I know Texas fans are obviously rooting for Oregon State. Texas and Iowa State is interesting to me because Texas has struggled in Ames. There's been a lot that's been made of that. I don't have the stat in front of me, but I think it's 4 out of the last 6, or it may be 5 out of the last 6 that Texas has lost in Ames. And it's a tough place to play. And Iowa State, they have rallied the troops and are playing so much better in the back half of the season from what we saw in the first half of the season where they lost. Obviously, the big one was to Ohio. The biggest difference to me, though, is up front, Iowa State, I think, is going to have a really hard time with Texas, especially on the defensive line. That's the best front in the Big 12. And that's the piece that I just worry about. Is Iowa State going to be able to put up enough points in the last couple of weeks where Texas has built these leads and then it's sort of fallen by the wayside in the second half? My concern is, does Iowa State have the horsepower to even do that? If this gets to, if it's a race to 30 points and Texas gets there in the first 3 quarters, I'm not sure that Iowa State could get to any, regardless of if it's in the fourth quarter or otherwise. I don't know that Iowa State can get to a point total that has a 3 in front of it. So I would say it's Washington and Oregon State. And look, I know that obviously Texas fans would love to see Washington lose to Oregon State.
Taylor, Texas A&M decides to move on from Jimbo Fisher after the win on Saturday. Not a surprising end result, but just the timing of it. And then you understand where we are in the calendar. But Jeff Traylor, a name that has already been reported to have interviewed. Obviously, he just makes a ton of sense regardless. But your thoughts on A&M opening up, also a guy like Traylor being a candidate since you know UTSA pretty well, and just your general thoughts on that job.
Well, first off, Paul, I think we called this, right? Last week. We nailed this. All right. Pat on the back for us. Look, I think the comment from Ross Bjork where he said they were stuck in the mud, from every Aggie that I've talked to, that sort of nailed how everyone in that program felt about where they were at. And as you look forward for a Texas A&M in the expanded playoff, they're still a ways away from being at an Alabama or a Georgia level. But A&M fans have this expectation of, look, we don't necessarily need to be the dominant 12-win team, 11-win team next year. But we should be in a position with the resources we have where we can be a 10-win team and be one of the at-large bids that gets into a 12-team format. And I tend to agree with them. I think in this world of college football where money can go buy you the best players in the portal, Texas A&M is going to continue to accumulate talent, but the scheme was not for Jimbo. And it's, as we mentioned with resources, it's a program that could go out and can spend the amount of money needed to walk away from whatever the obligation was, $75 million, something like that. As it relates to Jeff Traylor, look, we covered him a number of times, and there was a coach in the American Conference that knows him very well that told us privately. I think Jeff Traylor.
Hold on, Taylor, just a second. We lost you a little bit. Hold on, Paul. You got him. We're going to try to. It went. Remember back that was a common thing when somebody's on the phone driving around the country in certain country roads, and you just in the trees or whatever, or in the boonies as they call it, and he just lost him. So,
or it's the Bluetooth connection,
yeah.
So, I didn't want that to go any longer without hearing his answer there because he started to dive into it, and that's a pretty interesting topic, and especially Jeff Traylor, his knowledge of Coach Traylor. So I think we got him back.
Yeah, Taylor, go ahead if you don't mind and kind of go back and summarize or say what you were discussing.
Yeah, we lost you for a sec.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, all good, all good. On Jeff Traylor, I'll repeat because I think it's probably the most important piece. There was a coach that we have covered several times that referred to Coach Traylor as the ultimate motivator and said that to us, he said, look, anybody that crossed paths with him where he, whether that's a coach or, his players or recruits or their families, they come away believing in whatever message he is selling to them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the biggest piece. His kids believe in him and they play really hard. And everywhere that he's been, whether that's from high school all the way through UTSA, you can just see the belief in what he's built. The biggest piece to me, it just comes down to whether or not Texas A&M can get behind a guy that hasn't coached at that level before and really even close to that level. What he's built at UTSA is unbelievable. But the resources, the difference between what they have at UTSA and the expectations and resources at Texas A&M, I mean, they're vastly different. I do think out of everybody of the names that I've seen that are realistic candidates, I would take him over Urban Meyer. Dan Lanning's already said he has no interest. We've seen Lions head coach Dan Campbell said the same thing. I loved his comment. Hey, I love Texas A&M, but I'll do anything I can do to help them except coach them. But I think Jeff Traylor would make a ton of sense. I think it would be a great hire. The only thing I worry about is just there's so many A&M fans that they want to be great right now and they want a name. He's not that on a national scale, but I'm a huge Jeff Traylor fan. I think it would make a lot of sense.
Taylor McCark with us on 365 Sports from ESPN, broadcast color analyst on TV. So right now, if you were in that room when they do the college football standings, there seems to be a chunk of, 6 or 7 teams? 6 for sure, maybe 8. How would you go 1 through, not 4, but 1 through 5 as of right now with the evidence we have?
I think Georgia's the best team in the country. I think they're the deepest roster. They've been there even when Brock Bowers was out and the offense was struggling. You've seen them step up. Carson Beck has played fantastic. I would go Georgia number 1. I would go Michigan number 2. And one of the things that I really look at for Michigan is they went on the road and figured out pretty early on that Penn State was not going to score on them and did not have a forward pass after 7 or so minutes in the second quarter, which is one of the most unbelievable stats that I've seen in a long time. So I'd have Michigan 2. I would have, Ohio State 3. My concerns for them are on the offensive side. I think that problem answers itself because I think Michigan beats them in a couple weeks. And then behind them, I would have Florida State. So I know that's not, it goes fairly chalk with what we've seen from the poll. I would just switch up Michigan and Ohio State in the CFP rankings. It would not, if you put Ohio State at 4 behind Florida State, it wouldn't necessarily bother me. But you have to give Ohio State credit for the wins that they do have, both over Notre Dame and over Penn State. Behind them, the Pac-12 is interesting because it's similar to Oklahoma and Texas, where I think the better team is the one that lost. Oregon, to me right now, if you played them heads up on a neutral site, would be favored over Washington. And same for Texas over OU. Now they're obviously ranked well ahead of Oklahoma now. But look, the beauty is, as it always is, we will see this play out over the next few weeks. But there is absolutely a scenario where Texas wins the Big 12 with 1 loss over Oklahoma, and they still don't get in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I kind of want to see how their fans react to that.
That'd be awful.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
That would be something you probably thought you would never see. Just because, because we've even heard back in 2014, had it been Texas or Oklahoma in that mix, one of them would have gotten in. And that would be, oh, my God, all hell would break loose. Our chat room with UT Parking and Sandra Green and Paxton others would just go nuts.
Well, look through if Oregon, they play Arizona State this week on the road, you assume they'll win that game. If Oregon State were to beat Washington, and let's say it's close, and then the Pac-12 championship is a rematch still of Washington and Oregon wins that game in a blowout, Oregon is already ranked ahead of Texas right now. right? So now you've got to win over a team in Oregon State. You've got to win over the team that beat you earlier in the year. And if it's dominant, especially, I'm not sure that Texas would be able to jump them because of a lot of it is due to the Big 12 hasn't been great this year. And then the disaster ahead of them would be Georgia wins out, Michigan and or Ohio State wins out, and Florida State wins out. Now you would be banking on, is there a way that you can jump Oregon? And in the case that I just mentioned, if they go back-to-back Oregon State and wins over Oregon State and Washington, I'm not sure that it happens. So Texas needs some chaos ahead of them.
Taylor, I want to ask you about a game out of the American, SMU. Pretty good year for Rhett Lashley and company. Won't be surprised if we hear him in some of this carousel talk, but they've obviously got a lot in front of them with the ACC. But a big game tomorrow against Memphis. They're close to double-digit favors. Do you see it being that type of a game? I've seen some others that feel like Memphis has a better shot, but where do you stand on that?
Yeah, we had Memphis a week ago at Charlotte, and it's a really solid offensive team. Seth Enigan's playing really good quarterback play. Their challenge is on the defensive side. They are, the last 3 weeks, really getting pushed around up front. And SMU, I mean, just go back through the last few games in conference play. The only one really in the last several weeks that's been close was at Rice when Preston Stone, their quarterback, went down. I think SMU is the better team. I have my pick right now is that UTSA and SMU are playing for the conference championship in a couple of weeks. So I think SMU wins this game. I would be surprised if they don't cover. I think this is probably a 2-score win because, again, Memphis really struggling on the defensive side. We had them against Charlotte. Charlotte, really not a very good offensive team, and they ran for well over 200 yards on the ground. So I think SMU wins this game pretty convincingly.
Taylor, is Rice going to become bowl eligible? They got it. They got 2 left. They got to win both of them.
God, I hope so. It's you go back a few weeks ago, the loss to UConn is still just so tough. How that went down. The benefit for Rice is they've got 2 of the bottom teams in the conference down the stretch. On paper, they should beat Charlotte, but look, that line opened at 5.5, and now it's down to 2. So Charlotte they play hard. It's a good defensive front. Rice is going to have their hands full, and if JT Daniels, especially if he can't come back from the concussion, I think they're in trouble. And then if they get out of there with a win, they got FAU next week. And I'm sitting here in Boca Raton. I've got Tulane and FAU. If FAU can somehow come away with a win over Tulane, then it becomes Rice and FAU, the battle for bowl eligibility. So we'll see. I would love for them to get back to bowl eligibility and not get into a bowl on a 5-7 season.
Enjoy Florida. Thanks for your time. That's Taylor McCarg with us. Fridays around 4:30. We're kind of 10 minutes behind schedule with most of our guests. Coming up next, in fact, Stephen Johnson, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. On TCU, well, they need a couple of wins, and they host Baylor tomorrow. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on and the people that I've counted on multiple times throughout the years. And right now, they want you to count on great customer service and great pricing. And you can also count on there being a bit of construction out front because that's what's happening. The road in front, Highway 6, is being ripped up in front of the dealership and other businesses around there. But because of that, they want to make it easier for you to get on over to the dealership and have a hassle-free buying experience. So right now, that means taking a look at the Buick, the perfect combination of first-class luxury plus value like no other SUV on the market. It's ranked the #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers, and Buick offers amazing value. Right now, you can save $5,000 on a 2024 Buick Enclave at Richard Carr Buick. That's $5,000 off a new 2024 Buick Enclave. Also, if military and first responders can save an additional $500 on top of that, plus qualified Buick buyers can get 1.9% financing and no payments until 2024. So there's one of the new offerings that they have for you there at the dealership. They've also got the trades. You can trade for the best over at Richard Carr right now. A lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock, around 100 used cars and trucks to choose from. All inspected, 172-point inspection, and the Richard Carr seal of approval, which coming from Richard Carr. It's not just a name. That's a person who's been doing it the right way for a long time in the community. That seal of approval means a great deal. Their financing goal is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So check out the dealership that's been in business for 24 years in Central Texas, and throughout that time has built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs, run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
From the first workout to the last practice, sports is an incredible challenge. Hi, this is Dan Engel with the First National Bank of Central Texas, and we're proud to support each athlete, every parent, and our educators. From families, small businesses, to the biggest industry, we're here to help. With remarkable products like instant issue debit cards free at all of our banking centers, we've got banking ideas that fuel big dreams. The First National Bank of Central Texas. Familiar faces making local decisions.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Stephen Johnson, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He's been one of our guys, in fact, a go-to guy for us in the coverage of TCU. They host Baylor tomorrow afternoon at 2:30, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Stephen, how much gas does TCU have left in their tank?
Do we lose him?
No, my bad. Something was wrong with my AirPod, guys. But, yeah, to answer your question, it seems like they're fired up. They're fired up. They know how important this rivalry game is. TCU's obviously playing for a chance to make it to a bowl game. So I would say, based on what we saw last week against Texas, there's more fuel in the tank than you might expect, considering the season they've had.
Stephen, a couple years ago, Baylor played Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, and Jeff Lebby was the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, and I asked him at the press conference, was there any more sauce on this game because of their departure from Baylor? And he gave me the coach speakiest answer of all coach speaky times. I would have to assume that Kendall Briles feels similarly, but may not say anything. Do you think there's a little extra, zip on the fastball for him this week?
Well, if you're a TCU fan, I think you would certainly hope so, considering the offense has been, I think, inconsistent at best is probably the word I would use. So, if there's any time to bust out anything you got left, anything in the tank that you haven't used already, now would be the time, especially considering his history. I don't think he was a big fan of how his father was handled. So I would imagine he's fired and motivated. We haven't had a chance to talk to him this week. But, yeah, this is definitely a game. I think will be even, Baylor's not a great team, but this is still a big game for Kendall Briles, because you do not want to be in a situation where TCU comes out and maybe on the score is like 10 or so points. That will get this fan base really fired up even more than they have been all year.
Steven, what have you thought about the play of Josh Hoover as the weeks have progressed since I think we talked to you last? We've seen a lot more of him, but also what's the status of Chandler Morris right now as well? I remember reading something last week about how he appeared to be getting closer, but can you kind of clarify that for us?
I'm pretty sure it'll be Josh Hoover the rest of the way.
Okay.
As of today, I'm expecting Chandler's career as a Horned Frog is probably over, just because it's unfortunate the injury situation. But I think Josh has shown enough that they want to continue to get him these valuable reps, especially if they don't make a bowl game. This could be the last time or the last stretch where he could get those reps, get those in-game situations. So, but what I've seen from him is he's a young quarterback. There's been time he's had a turnover in every single game he's played in. So I think that's probably the biggest concern. The positive side is TCU was finally getting more chunk plays down the field because he's more aggressive than Chandler Morris. And he's shown more of a willingness, I think, to trying to stretch the field. And that's why you're starting to see Savion Williams start to break out a little bit for the Horned Frogs. He was kind of the receiver you thought could kind of replace Quinn Johnson. That hasn't happened, but he's coming off a career game last week against Texas. So we'll see if that can kind of carry over again on Saturday against the Bears.
There was no way that Sonny Dykes saw what has happened back, let's say, during the offseason, entering the season, even though the Big 12 is all jumbled up. There's no way he saw this coming, is there?
No, not at all. I mean, you guys probably heard some of the same things we were hearing. They believe they had a good team this year. They believe that they did a good job of replacing some of the talent, and maybe they didn't have the same quality as last year, but they thought they had better numbers, more of a quantity approach. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we don't have a Quinn Johnson, but we signed 5 or 6 receivers in the portal last year to kind of help up for that. So I think they thought they would be contending a lot more than this. They had high expectations for defense. And the defense has been a disappointment, especially considering what's happened against all the kind of the quality competition they face. So this has been a surprise to Sonny Dykes, especially the way they've lost games, missing kicks, turning the ball over in the red zone. They're 124th in red zone offense. I don't think they could have predicted that coming into the season.
I was going to ask you about that. Is that just the change in offensive line and also quarterback as much as anything? Like, I know in the Tech game, they got into territory, but then Josh Hoover had an interception, right? Or like, what do you attribute that to, that lack of success in the red zone? Because that's alarming to be that low.
Man, there are so many things. I think let's start with the O-line. They don't trust the O-line, I think, in those, those 3rd and 2s, those 2nd and goals from the 3-yard line. And just the interior of the offensive line, I think, has not shown the ability to continue to win those, physical matchups when you're trying to run the ball and punch it in. The quarterbacks, Josh Hoover and Chandler Morris, have struggled with turnovers. You guys remember that Colorado game?
Yeah.
They win that game if you don't throw 2 picks in the end zone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of happened all season. So I think turnovers, the lack of physicality with the offensive line in the run game. And I don't think Kendall has done a great job at times with some of the plays he'll call when they get to the red zone. They love running a lot of jet sweeps with some of their slower receivers, some trick plays that just, if they work, it's clever, but if they don't, it's kind of like, why not just run something a little bit more simple? So I would say those are probably 3 primary factors leading to what's going on.
I think the understatement of the segment was that, he didn't like the way everything was handled with his father, or no one did that was a part of that staff. Is there any frustration enough for him and his future there, or is that a locked-in position and give him another chance in the offseason to build more of what he wants to see on offense?
Based on my understanding right now, I think it would take, like I said, scoring 10 points against the Baylor, maybe getting shut out against Oklahoma, for I think Sonny to consider making a change like that. He is close to the Briles family. He vouched for him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He vouched him. So I don't think he would want to, kind of pull the plug in year one because they are, I believe, 16th in total offense. So it's weird. They do things well. They're one of the fastest teams in the country in terms of tempo. They do put up a lot of yards, but they just haven't executed, in a consistent fashion. So I think there's a case that could be made like, hey, second year for Hoover. We'll get some O-linemen in the transfer portal. So I would expect for him to be back. But like I said, if something drastic happens where you only score a touchdown or two against Baylor, then, hey, the noise is going to be extremely loud.
Steven, will you pick me up a Bluebonnet Battle T-shirt?
Man, if that's what you really want.
What has been the reaction among TCU fans? Because for Baylor fans, I think it's not been great.
It's basically the same thing. It's just kind of, look, I get it's the state flower. I'm not a native Texan. I don't know how much, pride y'all have in that thing. You got state flower. But generally speaking, man, I don't think we should be calling rivalry game. We shouldn't name them after a flower. You know what I mean? I like rivalry. I thought it had tied into Christian histories of both programs. It was unique. So I would have loved to see them kind of keep that or something that at least kind of acknowledges the fact they're both small private Christian institutions. But there's been a lot of memes and a lot of jokes. That trophy is heavy, man. So whoever wins, I don't know how they're going to carry it out of the stadium.
Put it in their ear like you do in Hawaii when you show up or something, like a hula dancer or something like that.
So the trophy's heavy.
Oh, that's right. It's heavy. The belt. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, it's like a shield and like a wooden placeholder. I tried to pick it up when they brought it to TCU earlier this week, and I'm just like, good luck. Those guys are stronger than me. So good luck to them.
Hey, Stephen, thank you for your time. Enjoy the game, Eamon Carter tomorrow. See, I keep on thinking it's just a flower. You just give somebody a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah. Well, it's not even the season for them.
Giant trophy.
Yeah, I know.
It's not even. That's the thing is, like, if you wanted to give, even if it was like part of it, like if you had like the queen of it, like, Baylor's got one and TCU has one, to give them Bluebonnets, they're not even in season right now.
No, you're right. That. And boy, I tell you what, though, we've said it a lot, but driving down the highways in the summer during the Texas summer, those things are beautiful along the highway. It's just absolutely gorgeous. A lot of times you'll see somebody who's been mowing the grass, and he or she will completely like turn. And it'll be a missed area because you don't mess with the Bluebonnets on the highways or anywhere else in Texas. All right, when we come back, we're not done. We're going to look at the scores or the games, not just Big 12. We've discussed that with Josh and a little bit with also Taylor McCark. Our thoughts on them and the bangers, top 25 games. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, new month. New incentives, new discounts, and also a lot more. For example, excellent value on the 2014 Lexus GS 350, 45,000 miles for $23,990. Also, 10% off. That's 10% off on all of the new Ram 2500 and 3500s in stock. And come out and watch and even test drive yourself the 2022 Dodge Challenger wide body Scat Pack Shaker, a little bit under 2,000 miles, ready for immediate delivery for only $56,990. Chevrolet Suburban High Country, the 2021 model, powerful 6.2 liter V8. $63,990. Those are pre-owned cars, and there's even more, and they are absolutely right there available for you to test drive and take home with you if you possibly can. Ted Teague, General Manager and CEO. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat Loop, 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
All right. We really haven't had a lot of time to go over the entire schedule. We mentioned tonight UTSA hosting USF in San Antonio and the Jeff Traylor career at UTSA with a lot of eyeballs, but now the fact interviewed by A&M and most likely, depending on what happens at Baylor and Houston, would be, you would think, depending if he's still available, interviewed at one of those or both of those schools. But here's the top 25, first of all. We're not going to go through all of them. Where are the bangers this week? There's always 2 or 3 bangers. Top 25 against top 25. It's very lean, although the best one's at 6:30 on Saturday, Washington, Oregon State.
Yeah, Washington, Oregon State, and Utah, Arizona to me are the best ones. And then you've got a couple of ranked versus ranked that may not be as good. Georgia versus Tennessee, not as good. Kansas and Kansas State are both ranked, and
have Big 12 championship implications.
But, without the top 2 quarterbacks, you just wonder how Kansas is going to be able to keep any kind of pace with Kansas State in that one. I think, outside of bangers, there's a couple of intriguing games here that could be, and they're in the ACC, that are, have to do with who's going to wind up in that title game. It's Louisville at Miami, and it's North Carolina at Clemson. If North Carolina's got to win that game. If they don't, then it doesn't matter what Louisville does against Miami. But if Louisville does win, then North Carolina has to win. I think then it also doesn't matter. But if Louisville loses, then North Carolina's got a shot. So they're starting at 2:30. They'll know whether they have a shot or not. And if Louisville wins, it's probably going to be, maybe a little bit of an uninspiring game because you're going to be down in the dumps. But that's interesting. And I'm interested to see how Miami, who played pretty well against Florida State last week, considering all things considered, rolls out with Tyler Van Dyke again at quarterback and hopes that he doesn't throw interceptions, which has been his problem. But other than that, it's that second to last week that can get pretty blah, for everybody.
Has Kansas ruled out Jason Bean?
think so.
I don't think they've ruled him out, so we'll see if he's out or not. But I was wondering if you had seen something, because I don't think I saw that yesterday. Yesterday I remember seeing that he was practicing and taking reps. So I don't know if they're going to be without their. Obviously they're going to be without Jalen Daniels, but I think there is a chance Jason Bean could play. Now, is that going to mean that they, beat Kansas State? I still think not, but it definitely would give them a little bit of help. Although Cole Ballard, did what he could last weekend. So yeah, that'll be something to watch for is whether Jason Bean's available or not for the Sunflower Showdown. But I mean, you kind of touched on a lot of the games. Louisville, Miami, that will be interesting. We talked about North Carolina, Clemson. Again, another ACC game, as Paul mentioned. Very interesting there as Clemson starts to kind of get their drum beat going once again. And we all know the kind of tales around Mac Brown. Mac Brown's going to be back next year, by the way. I don't know if you guys ever saw that, but I know we didn't mention it, but that was out there. So, North Carolina, it's a matter of sticking in the top 25 now. And then you lose to Clemson. All of a sudden, what was a big banner year, has really started to kind of just turn into another year, basically, except for this time, this is really Drake May's last run. So I don't expect a lot out of Georgia, Tennessee as far as like the upset potential there. But that's a game with two very talented teams, obviously, and you never know any given Saturday. But yeah, it's a lot of good games there. There's not necessarily, as you said, like the top 25 versus top 25. They're both in the top 10. Mm-hmm. But I think there's some interesting contests that should make for a worthwhile day. And the last time everybody complained about a lack of not very good games was probably the most exciting weekend of the entire year. So that doesn't guarantee anything when you have a bunch of them, nor guarantee anything when you don't have a bunch of them. So here at the end, I'm hoping for some chaos.
All right, before we get to the Big 12 schedule, a couple of notes on Houston. From Joseph Duarte that does a great job. Dana Holgerson would asked about the program. This is the only place I want to be. I'll be here as long as you want to have me. We're going to continue to get better. We're going to get this thing going in the right direction. Now, that's one of them. Then earlier today, Houston announced their new Houston Memorial Hermann Football Operations Center. And when Chris Pesman was asked about that, I think it's like over $100 million or so, about building it, he goes, it's because we're going to win, which is what Baylor's got their football ops and others, of course, Texas Tech with the massive construction. So that's the renderings of what Houston's doing. Today, a couple of different notes with that.
It's cool. They're honoring Tom Herman like that with their football operations
Former
center.
Purdue quarterback, what was that guy's name, Herman? It was a quarterback that had the two N's at the end of it.
Yeah, I think, look, this is a groundbreaking and whatever today, and Dana Holgerson was there, so that's probably good news for him that they're not going to turn around and fire him in a couple weeks. And look, I do think that they expected the first transition year to be bumpy. But again, I think that this is kind of now the baseline of things can't be this erratic anymore. You've got to start being able to move ahead. But their roster was rated, by the NFL and by the transfer portal, and so sometimes you can only do so much. And the other thing is that when you've been in a Power 5 conference for your whole existence, so your baseline of losing a starter and then somebody coming in. Well, he was always recruited to be a Power 5 player. If you're Houston or Cincinnati or UCF, that's not necessarily the case. So there's going to be those things, but I wonder going forward if that was kind of a good sign that you had him out there, at that groundbreaking.
Board Regents Tillman Fertitta on Holgerson. I haven't gotten a lot of questions about his status. If you want to know the truth. First year in the Big 12, we're 4-6. We prefer to be 6-4. Yeah. If we're behind expectations, I don't think we're hugely behind expectations. So it's not like we're 2-10 or 2-8. You have won 2 games we have won 2 games in the Big 12. And that's a little bit of a vote of confidence in whether that's just standard or Fertitta does seem to like Dana quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'm sure he doesn't want to go and just turn around and pay a big buyout. And, all the money going around, even with more money now in the Big 12, a lot of that goes back into reinvesting. And so, yeah, I'm sure that he wouldn't want to have to now go start up a coaching search. And maybe now the timing's not right to do it. I know there's a vocal segment of UH fans that are not Holgerson supporters and would like to see a change. But it's just like, okay, So Jeff Traylor, that's what you want, right? Or who else are you going to go out there and get that can guarantee you that it'll be on better footing? I don't know about that. It does seem like it's probably setting up for him to come back. And they have won a couple Big 12 games. I mean, they've got to win out tomorrow. Number 23, Oklahoma State seems unlikely, but it's at home. And then at UCF, that also seems unlikely, but you never know. But they've got to win both of those to get into a bowl game. And it is their first year in the Big 12, so there is something to be said, as we see all 4 teams have struggled with that to some extent, some worse than others. But all of them have kind of been in that bottom half of the league, if not down at the very bottom. Cincinnati for the last several weeks until finally getting their first Big 12 win, but they're still at the bottom at 1-6. So, yeah, I mean, everybody was expecting to take some lumps, but I will say, too, that the only reason it's going to seem like I'm taking away from it, and I guess I am in a way, but they Hail Married West Virginia, and then they beat Baylor like straight up in most of that game, but then it went to overtime, right? And so those were their 2 Big 12 wins. I mean, by the skin of their teeth, they got those 2 Big 12 wins, but they got them nonetheless. So let's see what they do these last couple weeks. But, yeah, I can see both sides of that from the Holgorsen perspective of wanting to keep him because you got to give him some time to get it going, and from the other perspective of like, all right, we've seen enough, and this isn't going to turn into anything other than kind of what it is right now. So that's going to be for Tita to decide ultimately.
Garrett, I just sent you one more, if you don't mind having it up. We don't have to do it right away. Let's do the Big 12 schedule. We have discussed these with some analysts. We have also made picks ourselves. Oklahoma, BYU. Damn it!
You stopped though, so that's good.
750 rather than 10.
It's progress.
I stopped myself twice today. Yeah. BYU host Oklahoma. And we asked Josh Neighbors about this. They have now lost a bunch of games. Really kind of, to me, I've even seen some flare-up about Kalani Sitake. I don't think that's the case, but it has been, I would think, a disappointing first year for BYU.
I think that you have to – look, Cincinnati is not going to fire Scott Satterfield right now. It's his first year. So they're gonna navigate through that. BYU probably shouldn't fire. I hope they don't fire Kalani Sitake. He's done a really good job there. Let him figure out the Big 12. We just talked about Dana Holgorsen, and Gus Malzahn's not getting fired. So you have to adjust to those things. Now, look, if you are one of the incoming 4 teams next year and you've been in a Power 5 conference and you come in and fall flat in your face, it's probably a different conversation to have, especially coming from where the Pac-12 is just in the immediate, like today, and going into the Big 12. You should feel pretty good about where you are and being able to compete in this league. But that's 2 different sides of the coin. BYU, like you said, just hasn't. Like, they don't do things well. Like, there's not – what do you say
good.
that they're – yeah.
They're not good.
Yeah, sometimes even, like, bad teams, you think, well, at least they can do this. BYU just can't – I don't know what that would be.
Iowa State beat them to a pulp.
Yeah. I mean, guys, it's I know we probably don't want to say it, but, like, we dog on Baylor all the time. Baylor's not a good team. BYU is not a good football team right now. They're not good on offense. They're not good on defense. And, they got a new defensive coordinator, so that's somewhat to be expected. You've had some injuries to Slovis, but even when Slovis was playing, it's not like they were lighting the scoreboard up. So, I think they benefited from beating Arkansas on the road in week 3, and it's like, oh, shoot, they're 3-0. They just beat an SEC team on the road. Little did we know that Sam Pittman's on the hot seat. Weeks later. And then, beyond that, they beat Cincinnati in a battle of the newcomers, and that was good to get your first Big 12 victory. And they beat Texas Tech in a game where Tech had a handful of turnovers in that game. But beyond that, I mean, it's all red and L's. And so that's been their little welcome to the Big 12. I think the timing of it stinks that they're just not a very good team. And they wouldn't be a good team if they were playing their independent schedule. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not a... And so you add in going to the Big 12, and it's just they got caught on a bad year that multiplied because all of a sudden there was a step up week to week in competition as well, and a lot of newness and all of that to account for. So, they'll work it out. I've seen chatter about Sitake, but that just seems kind of ridiculous compared to some of the other chatter. And I would think, outside of the Paul mentioned in the new 4, I mean, the only one, you cross your fingers and hope all those coaches are going to be here because that's the appeal of Colorado as much as anything. That's what you want with Utah for certain. With Arizona, hopefully Jed Fish is still at Arizona and is not picked off on the carousel. The only one you look at and you kind of side-eye is maybe Kenny Dillingham because they're not very good. Big picture, maybe you feel like it's building towards something, but, when you fire an AD – and then you're struggling, and you just wonder, like, if they come struggling in again. But, you hope all 4 of those guys are going to be around. Dillingham's going to be. I'm just saying he's the only one you even have really a question about at the moment as far as the future and what that looks like of how long he could be around.
All right, how many more games did we did BYU at home against Oklahoma? Go ahead. I'm just saying we got a lot of games to get to and not a lot of time to do it. Cincinnati, West Virginia.
I mean, like West Virginia should win this game easily. I mean, they can run the ball at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's not, and then they're another bad team. So I think they should win that one easily. Very.
Yeah, I think West Virginia should win. They're at home, and they're just a better team, I think.
Did I cut you off?
I mean, no. Let's. I mean, we got to go, or we got to go, or we don't.
No, I mean, I just want to make sure we get to all these 7 games. West Virginia. You think easily?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they should. I mean, that doesn't mean that happens. Look, this is this is an old Big East rivalry, but no players in this game know that or care. So, for the fans in Morgantown, it might be, but I don't see Cincinnati rolling into Morgantown, one of the toughest places to play, whether West Virginia is good or bad, in winning that game.
We've discussed Baylor and TCU and almost don't really need to. We'll have our pregame tomorrow at, 12:30. I think TCU wins the game 30-16 or whatever. I don't know. Maybe Baylor gets juiced up because there's an NIL policy now. I don't know, or one that's upgraded. I don't know that. TCU is just not, to me, going to blow this opportunity with a bowl game right in their sights.
Well, they got to beat Baylor and Oklahoma to do that. So it got to beat Baylor first. We've talked about this one. I mean, I don't think anybody thinks Baylor's going to win, but this is a 4-6 team versus a 3-7 team. So not the sexiest rivalry that there's ever been.
Yeah, I'll go with TCU here. I think they're just a slightly better team. I don't think they're all that great, but they're at home. Baylor struggled. We keep waiting for Baylor to have maybe this week's the week, and we're at the last 2 games of the season, and nothing's changed really. So the history of this rivalry doesn't necessarily impact this year, but I mean, TCU always wins. They always win over the past decade, so I'm not expecting that to change now, especially with the state that Baylor's in.
Name a game in the last 15 years or so when Baylor beat TCU and they weren't favored.
I mean, I can't. They're just not.
Because the Terrell Byrd interception in the end zone, that was a bang-bang game, but Paha, remember, had been through the suspension, and it gets the tip. Then they win in triple overtime. That was probably Baylor. That was a 19 team, right? So They were favored, should have been. And then there have been 2 or 3 times in the last 10 or 12 years when TCU was not favored at all. Hell, one year at home when Jalen Reagor went crazy, when they had their third-string quarterback, and he got hurt, I believe. And so they just win that game. Oklahoma State, I would think so far this year, through 7 games in the conference, the loss, not the loss to UCF, but the ass-kicking against UCF might be one of the more surprising outcomes, score-wise, that we've seen throughout the year.
Yeah, I kept racking my brain as how did Oklahoma State not, even after they fell behind, how do you not, score a couple of garbage touchdowns in that thing? How did that happen? And I know the weather and all that, but I do probably feel the wrath Houston feels the wrath of Ollie Gordon this week because they're gonna try to get him back on track and get him back in the conversation. But that against UCF last week was and so I expect them to respond really well. And Houston they're kind of there, but again, not great, not great, Bob.
Yeah, Houston turns it over too much with Donovan Smith. I'd imagine he'll probably do that again. If not, then they give themselves a chance to win. But there's nothing about Houston that really makes me think they're going to be, a team impossible to rebound against for Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State's going to be revved up, ready to go after last week. I don't think there'll be a torrential downpour for a quarter that will derail that. And I think that Ollie Gordon gets back to more of what we saw prior to last week, which was just kind of an outlier. So, yeah, I don't have high hopes for Houston here unless just miraculously they're protecting the football and hit some huge plays, but it's kind of hard to see that. I could see this being maybe a little bit of a shootout, but I'd still favor Oklahoma State in that, and I think Ollie Gordon has a big game.
One of the more intriguing games, 2 teams coming off wins, both a win away from being bowl eligible. Texas Tech winning at Kansas, UCF, crushing Oklahoma State. This might be a heck of a game up in Lubbock, Texas.
It might be, or it might not. It depends who of these 2 teams shows up. Do the best versions of UCF and Texas Tech both show up tomorrow afternoon? Do they both do it at the same time? I'm not confident that can happen, and I don't like Texas Tech is way better at home than they are on the road. That's obvious. So that leads me to believe that they will be Taj Brooks running against that UCF defense. I don't think that they're going to muscle up and do it 2 weeks in a row. But if the best version of UCF shows up, then this one will get fun. But the best two versions of this team have not ever been consistently back-to-back weeks all year long, and that's why they're both, 2 weeks out of the end of the season and needing a win to go to a bowl game now.
I think location matters here. If this is in Orlando, I think you'd look at it a little bit differently. But the fact that it's in Lubbock, I do think favors the Red Raiders. I think Taj Brooks has had a great year and should have some success against that UCF run defense, which surprisingly stood up pretty well against Ollie Gordon last week. But, yeah, I think Tech will be able to run the football, and I think they'll be able to sling it around a little bit. And I just think they're a slightly better team overall when you factor in the home field advantage that they should have. So, UCF traveling to Lubbock, I think there's a chance for them if they can grab hold of some momentum early. But I don't know. I just feel like Tech's the one that's in better shape to win this game.
Jennifer is in Lubbock with some of her sorority girls up there at the Coyotes, and she sent me a text yesterday or called me. She said, Dad, you are not allowed to call me anytime after 3:15 today until I come home late Sunday night. And I said, why not? She goes, because you just don't need to. You don't need to. I think she's going to go up there and have fun with her sorority girls.
It should be a blast.
Here's a tweet. Taj Brooks, you brought him up. Most missed tackles in college football running backs this year. At the very top is Taj. Jonathan Brooks had a great year. He's out. He's right there next to him. And then you see the names down the list. Marion Hampton's a heck of a player. How about Amani Bailey right there? A little bit higher than maybe most people think. R.J. Harvey had a monster game against UCF. And there are the top, 10 most missed tackles among Power 5 running backs.
I'm not surprised on the top, well, any of them really. Honestly, I am surprised that Ollie Gordon is so far down to the bottom. Although sometimes he just kind of
missed like the first 2.5. Didn't play much the first 2 or 3 games.
Yeah. He has a couple games where he doesn't have many carries. It just seems to me that he still would run through more tackles, but I know that's different. But yeah, Taj Brooks is a beast. He is running through tackles. And of course, of those 77, 38 of them were against Baylor.
All right, the next game on the Big 12 schedule tomorrow. You have Kansas and Kansas State. Kansas still the question about their quarterback. The good news this week, Jalen Daniels is back next year. But what about this weekend hosting Kansas State coming off the route of Baylor?
I just don't believe I read what the offensive coordinator said, and he's kind of being cagey about it. It's kind of the same thing they've done with Jalen Daniels over the last couple of years where, he might have practiced, and they kind of say, well, he could be out there. I don't know. And maybe he does play. I'm just not confident that Jason Bean plays. And even if he does play, Kansas State's still a really good team. And even though this is in Lawrence, I think that Kansas State's just deeper and better. Although if everybody's at full strength, this would have been a really fantastic game.
Yeah, Kansas doesn't have any Big 12 hopes now after last week. Kansas State still does to a slight extent, but would need help. And I'd expect they're going to be locked in like they still have a great opportunity to get there. And plus, it's just a rivalry game as is. I think, if Jason Bean plays, that certainly gives KU a better chance. But I still think Kansas State's the better team overall. And we'll roll into Lawrence and get the W and just see where the rest of the chips fall earlier in the day. And then obviously a little bit later on at night, they'll get back to their locker room and be able to see what happens with that Texas score. But, I think that Kansas State's playing really well right now, and I don't expect that to change against Kansas.
Iowa State, one of the better stories in the Big 12. There are others, but they are one of the best, and what they're doing. And at home against Texas, having a 9-1 year, they've kind of played with their food in the second half a little bit, but they keep finding ways to win. And they need to keep winning, and, of course, a win would put them in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, what's going to happen there with their offense. But I don't know if Iowa State can play a flawless enough offensive game to score more points in this one over 4 quarters than Texas can. But we'll see. I mean, sometimes you just can't win at places very well, and lately that's been Ames for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I like Texas here. I mean, Ames is a tough place to play, but, I mean, that's the only thing we keep saying is that, it's tough to play in Ames. What about the defense? What about the quarterback? What about the skill guys? I don't think that there's really a thing that you're heavily concerned about if you're Texas. Your passing, defense is maybe where they could get you, but I don't know that you're really all that fearful of Rocco Becht at this point. I think that they've got the motivation of this being the last go-round and also playing at home. But beyond that, if this game were in Austin, I don't think we'd blink at it. So, I'm going Texas here.
All right, those are the games in the Big 12. Garrett, is there one in particular you think might be that sticks out to you that might be, this is a chance this might happen?
I mean, the one, I think UCF and Texas Tech is interesting just because the way the Knights played last week, but obviously Tech does play better at home, so I would take Texas Tech in that matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised if UCF puts together a performance the way they did last week if they went into Lubbock and played spoiler.
Yeah, are they who they were against Oklahoma State or at Oklahoma,
right,
or other games, almost 3 full quarters against Baylor until they just a tire blew from the heck of it. Now, a couple of other tweets to get to, and then we have Sam Bradshaw in the TCU Baylor matchup. Matt Rule, Nebraska football coach. Matt Rule, quote from this week, Nebraska plays Wisconsin and Iowa. They have to win one of those two to become bowl eligible. In search of that elusive 6th win, they've been in a 5-game non-bowl streak. This is a life we've chosen. This world, to me, it's always like the mafia. You get hired, eventually you get whacked, and you live as much as you can in between.
Yeah, I love this quote, and we'll see. They got it. One of these teams got to win to get to a bowl game this week or next week, whatever it is. And I would think that this one is a better shot than trying to, pee a drop against that Iowa defense. So, so good luck. I mean, no offense in the Big Ten West is any good anyway right now, and all the coaches would probably tell you that. So we'll see what happens here. But I like the attitude, like go in there and, put a horse head in somebody's bed.
Yeah, interesting quote there. He's very quotable. Kind of missed that. Instead of it being, some long philosophical type of kind of an explanation like we get from Miranda. That's fun from time to time, but sometimes you just want like something like kind of like that. Big games coming up for them with a couple of weeks to go, and we'll see what they are able to do with it. But I think that program's heading in the right direction. There is a rumor out there, it's just Twitter, but that Rule's interviewing for the A&M job. So have fun with that, Nebraska fans. As far as like that's what's going to be the case with him, because he's been so often mentioned in previous jobs. But I mean, I think he's at a spot now where he feels pretty good about things. But just saying, that was out there. I don't know to what extent, but yeah, I think he's building something nice in Nebraska, and may not get there in year one, but it'll build up quite nicely over time.
I am not so sure that the real story is that A&M contacted him, and he's not wanting to leave Nebraska, stay in Lincoln. Of course, his name is always up there because of opportunities, but I believe that A&M has interviewed. We know Jeff Traylor. I believe that Matt Rule has said, I think I'm good right now.
It seems to be too soon to do that. And look, the only difference, well, I said not the only difference. I mean, A&M's been better over the last 20 years than Nebraska has, but that's, they both haven't won national titles, so A&M's had more bowl games and more things like that than Nebraska has over the last 20 years.
I think even Nebraska's struggles is not much different than what A&M has.
No, I mean, like, again, what are we talking about? Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Like, A&M wants you to win the national title right now or contend for it, and 8-4 feels like, what's the difference between 8-4 and 5-7 when the goal is to be in the playoff?
Yep.
Not much, so.
But it is nice to at least you're getting to a bowl game, but those aren't the goals.
No, exactly. So that's the thing. Program. Like you're kind of jumping out of the frying pan and into another and into the fire a little bit there. The only difference I would say between Nebraska and A&M right now is Jimbo built A&M's roster, a lot better. So if Matt Rule wants to step in there and win, okay, fine. But again, like, what are you doing? Like you're kind of doing this. It's the same job you'd be doing.
West Virginia center Zach Frazier was invited to the Reese's Senior Bowl. And then Dane Brugler, who we've had on, a great scout or when it comes to NFL draft. Zach Frazier was my highest graded center entering the season. Strong week in Mobile will help him finish that same way. West Virginia Frazier, one of the few centers in this class with NFL starting potential.
Yeah, no, he's a very good player. He looked like, if you looked at him, if you had to pick him out of like, okay, what position on the line does he play? He looks exactly like a center. He's built exactly like a center. He's not like a guard.
Like a block of granite?
Yeah. He doesn't look like a guy that's a guard that they said, can we teach you how to snap the ball and let's get through this? He looks like a center, a really good player. One of those guys, I would say probably if he gets past the second round, that means he probably has some sort of injury.
All right. How long is Sam?
About 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart has decided and made the comment or has made the decision he will return Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss for 2024.
I hope that Spencer Sanders enjoyed his year off in Oxford.
Yeah, it's still one of the more puzzling decisions. I still don't quite understand that. But, hey, worked out okay for Oklahoma State.
Kansas State AD Gene Taylor got a contract extension through 2030. We've had him on this show. He's done an incredible job with K-State. Their women's team got a great win last night against number 2 Iowa. Annual salary near $1 million. $250,000 retention bonuses the next 4 years, $500,000 after year number 4. And finally, this one. We covered him. Midway football quarterback, Ty Brown, had as MVP of District 12 6A. I put this up because he's going to the Horseshoe up to Ohio State. His dad played there, and he put that up on Twitter. He is going to get a visit to Ohio State up in Columbus. Again, I'm sure there's a little bit of a family opportunity here. His father played there again, was an offensive lineman. We got to meet him during our rain delay game a couple of weeks ago at a home game. When we come back, analyst Sam Bradshaw, Baylor, and TCU. Paul's top 5 is just around the corner. Waco Custom Marketplace, holiday items available. All of these are somewhere in that $4 or $5 range. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. 12-pound pit hams, $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams at 18 to 22 pounds at $3.40 a pound. Whole raw turkeys, 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. Mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. Give them a call if you want. Drop by their location. All of those items are in stock, have been since, November the 8th, so a little bit, around a week or so. As holidays, of course, around the corner, whether Thanksgiving, family get-togethers, business or office-type meetings, or gifts you want that you can send to clients and also family members. Christmas a little over a month away. Waco Custom Marketplace at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Don't miss out on our biggest deals of the year during the Black Friday sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Experience the adventure, style, and comfort of the new 2023 Jeep lineup, including the Grand Cherokee, Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Gladiator, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4xe. Jeep SUVs are known for their versatility from daily commuting to outdoor adventures. Hurry in and take advantage of these Black Friday deals today and start your Jeep adventure. Shop our great selections of new inventory in-store or online at AllenSamuelsDCJ.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. I'm David Smoak. And how about the success of your auction? So good, right? With all of your great product, your aged Wagyu and more, that you're going to do something similar at the early part of December.
Yeah, so we had such a good auction that we feel like we found a different way to sell our beef. So on December 1st, we're going to do a silent auction, and it's going to be all online at cci.live, and it's going to last from December 1st to December 3rd, and we're calling it the Silent Night Auction with 12 different lots for the 12 days of Christmas. We'll have all of the information online at TexasBeefHouse.com.
TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, this is aged Wagyu beef and so much more. And this, Samantha, is going to be for the steaks. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll all be for different packages that are full of steak, skirt steak, flap steak, flat iron. It's going to be a variety. That way it's kind of like a Christmas package. All of our hamburger and sausage are still available online. And you can use gift cards, not only online, but you'll also be able to use them for the auction.
So once again, TexasBeefHouse.com. Such an incredible auction that he experienced. And now again, Samantha, starts December 1st for 3 days. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we can't wait for y'all to see how this one's going to go.
I can't wait. The steaks are amazing. They are delicious, mouth-watering delicious. TexasBeefHouse.com. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
The 365 Sports Friday Show is presented by Bird Culchin Ford and the U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company.
Sam Bradshaw, Sikkim365.com, joins us now as he does every single week. And Sam, TCU is a bit of an enigma, aren't they? They have moments. They have obviously not responded to, or taken advantage of being in the national championship game last year. What, though, about them scares you most about what they can do against a Baylor team that's now, just really up against it?
Thanks for having me on. And TCU is an interesting matchup because on the defensive side of the ball, they're very similar to the last few teams that Baylor's had up and down success with, in that they run that 3-3-5, where it's very much keep you in front of them, ask their D-line to do a lot against the run so that they can then have their secondary rally to the ball. But much like Kansas State runs it, they have some speed on the back end that'll allow them to use some single coverage situationally. And they ask those linebackers to flow fast to the ball. I mean, one of the things that got tossed around Coach Twitter last year when Baylor played them was when Grimes had the guards literally pivot around and then counter the other way, because the initial action of them pulling in one direction got those linebackers to flow so fast. And it was so effective that Kansas State copied it literally like 2 weeks later. So on that side of the ball, you've got similar challenges to what's resulted in some up and down situations for Baylor the last few weeks. And then on the other side of the ball, you got a situation where you got a lot of freshmen and second-year nose tackles and a 270-pound nose tackle going against an offensive line with guards that average 350 and an offensive line across the board that averages 330, that is able to get some movement in the run game. And you have an offensive coordinator that absolutely has a personal reason to want to put as many points on Baylor as humanly possible, even though the particulars of how they do their passing game is a little bit different than how it was done when his dad was here. And it's going to be an interesting challenge because you have a very motivated opponent who has some personnel advantages at key points in their scheme against a Baylor team that's still trying to find their way on each side of the ball in some respects.
So for Baylor, again, like they really did, hit the wall once again last week with a Kansas State team that's really good. And, we talked about it last week. Like if you were just to create a team in a vacuum, like if you were just said, okay, what can I do to beat this one team? Like Kansas State would be that team to beat Baylor. Like you would, without any creativity and like nuance, runs the ball, stops the run well, like good defense, all those things. But they did have their moments last week where they, like, some things shined. what is the silver lining this week heading into TCU, a team that Baylor regularly does not beat?
Well, getting back to that Kansas State game, the score got out of hand because you had 3 non-offensive scores, or de facto non-offensive scores. You had a punter snap issue that resulted in Kansas State getting the ball on the 1. You had a situation in where you had a pick 6 off of an RPO, where Chapin just hands the ball off. And Chapin's usually very good at decisions in terms of drop back passing, but last week, some of his decisions on whether to hand off or throw on RPOs were quite poor, and that was one of them. And then there was another defensive score that Kansas State had just off a fumble, I believe. That got it out of hand. But outside of that, you saw a better execution from the offensive line in run blocking. Randa got into it in his post-game comments, but that was probably the best they've looked in terms of blocking for the run. And that's one thing Baylor's going to try and look to build on as they face a team that structures their run defense and their run fits and a lot of their assignments and their personnel defensively in a very similar way to how Kansas State does it. So Baylor had success against a very similar looking team last year, blocking them. And if they're able to do that, this is a defense that Baylor was able to get the run game going on last year to a pretty good degree. Obviously, Baylor's got a different defensive line, but, TCU lost their top 4 defensive ends from last year. So it's not exactly the same D-line on the outside, at least for them. If Baylor can replicate a lot of the success they had in the ground game, you at least have the starting point for running what you want to run and putting them in conflict and getting some guys open.
What has your assessment been of Josh Huber?
My assessment is he's a young guy in an offense that it's very different than the old Brile scheme. The old Brile scheme, you had multiple guys outside the numbers. You were ensuring a lot more one-on-one matchups with a lot of deep option routes. This is not that. First off, you're going to notice that the splits for the receivers are much more condensed. It looks a lot more Larry Fedora than it looks our Brile in that sense. You have a lot more spacing routes, layered routes. You have working the middle of the field. Frankly, when Baylor faced Texas State was more old school Baylor than this offense appears to be. Don't get me wrong. They're still going to run tempo. They're still going to run the ball down your throat. They're still going to try and build shots based off of that. But how they get to that and how they space their receivers and the routes they run are radically different. So with Hoover, you got a young guy that's got an arm. He's got a little bit of mobility, but he's also very young. And this team has a really big offensive line that I think for Baylor provides some matchup issues, but I don't think they've been exceptional running the ball. I think they've just merely been good, and they've got some guys that can break some long plays for them, but down in, down out, I don't think they're quite the grinders we've seen TCU have up front in the past. I think you've got a young kid that's going to get better as he plays more, and he has the raw tools to do it, but I think he's still kind of feeling his way.
So how do you expect this game to play out? Because these are both two teams that have, TCU better than Baylor, obviously, but have underachieved to probably the highest level that their fans expected them to underachieve this year.
Yeah, I think obviously the favored aspect is going to go to TCU. Not only are they a 14-point favorite, I think, according to Vegas, but beyond that, the most similar schematic offense to what Baylor runs that's on TCU's schedule is BYU, who Baylor took the offensive coordinator from and they promoted from within to replace. And TCU absolutely shut them down completely. And they got into the matchup issues on the interior defensive line. So I think Baylor's going to have to move their D-line more than they're used to. They're going to have to bring pressure more than they're used to. And they're going to have to trust that those young DBs can hold up. Now, the one matchup area that I think Baylor has some advantage is TCU's got a lot of big receivers on the outside. Baylor's got a lot of corners who run 6 foot plus that can move, that can hang with people. That's going to be something to their benefit. And because of that, you have the ability to put a little bit more on them in this situation, particularly against a young quarterback. But, TCU's got a defense that has already shut down somebody that runs their offense very similar to Baylor. So it's going to be absolutely critical that they get the running game going so they can give Chapin some favorable looks, because Chapin's played pretty well in spite of how everything has gone with the offensive line, with the run game. So if you give him the benefit of a run game here, and, you know, if you're able to block it up the way you did against Kansas State last week, you at least have the starting point for that. And then defensively, you're going to have to take some chances, get these guys off the field. Because that's one thing that both Texas and Kansas State did really well, is they were able to get them off the field. And they're really two of the only teams that have consistently done that all year. And if Baylor's able to take some chances, get them off the field, and get ahead of the chains a few times against these guys, it could pay really big dividends.
Sam Bradshaw, SicEm365.com with us every single week, and you should subscribe to Sam. So I'm trying to think of a score prediction now, Sam, and I really can't on this. I cannot. This Baylor team's are hard to get a read on. TCU is maybe the hardest team to get a read on right now because they've got to win their next two to get bowl eligible, and Baylor would be an important one in that. But Baylor also now knows that they're not, so they can just fire all the bullets that they want, right?
Yeah, and I think you'll see Baylor do some of that. I mean, you saw it a little bit last week against Kansas State where you had the quarterback throwback double pass, so it was basically a flea flicker that looked like a quarterback screen that got Dabney open for the long touchdown. You know, my prediction is going to be a TCU win. The exact number that I'm going to put on it, I'm still going back and forth on, but I think the advantage in terms of their offensive line against Baylor's undersized front, and I think their experience having shut down a very similar BYU scheme should pay dividends for the Frogs, and I will be happy to be wrong.
Sam Bradshaw every week. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Same to you.
That's Sam Bradshaw here on 365 Sports. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street in Waco, a hidden gem. And look, they have a new hidden gem. It's not so hidden. It's on Franklin Avenue in downtown Waco. So 2 locations to serve you now with what you need. And it is that time of year where the fall brews start to turn into winter brews. They're turning that roster at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Great craft bourbons available, local craft bourbons, whether it's Garrison Brothers, Balcones, Devil's River, TX. They've got all that there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Great customer service, a speedy drive-through window. Believe me, you will be satisfied with whatever you get at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. They have got a great selection, great expertise, all that. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, now with 2 locations to serve you.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 key things to watch in Week 12. These are things that could affect the playoff or just kind of maybe interesting scenarios. Number 5, can Tennessee do anything against Georgia? Georgia has turned it on. Like their early season woes are well behind them. Tennessee looked like they were a team that could at least, bump heads with everybody, but after that debacle against Mizzou last week, where Mizzou just ran right through them, Mizzou's really good and gave Georgia all they wanted a couple weeks ago. I just don't see Tennessee being the team that, if you were hoping for Georgia's win streak to end, I don't think it comes at the hands of the Vols.
Yeah, I don't either. I think Georgia's the best team pound for pound in the country right now, and Tennessee, obviously, been an up and down season for them, but not banking on even being at home this to be a game that goes in their favor in the long run. I think they keep it close early, but I think Georgia's just too good.
Yeah, they've been okay, Tennessee, but Georgia seems like they're just kind of like they're just prepping. They're like getting ready for a marathon, and they're running a little bit longer every weekend, getting better and better. And I think they might maul Tennessee.
Number 4, will Oregon State knock UW out of playoff contention? I don't know. I mean, like, they can, if they, like, and that's my other question is, will they, say it's a close game and Washington takes a loss and then beats Oregon again in the conference title game? Was that put Washington back in, or do they get in the same mess that Texas and Alabama are going to be in? I'm very curious about that, but this is every game is the biggest game of the season when you're trying to make the playoff, obviously, but this one is so interesting and so the ramifications of it have more than just one tentacle to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge game, massive game for both teams, and Washington in particular as far as the playoff hopes go, but huge fan experience, and I would expect dramatic backdrop and just big stakes attached to this one in Corvallis. So, I think the Beavers will be ready. They play better at home. I mean, you say that with every team, but like they know they really are like way better at home than they are on the road. So there was certainly a lot of talk about an upset potential earlier in the week, and I don't think that subsided much at all. So I mean, will they? That's obviously what we're watching for tomorrow. But there's as good of a chance as any for them to do so.
Who's better? Resume. 1 loss Texas, 1 loss Alabama. We know the head-to-head. 1 loss Oregon, or 1 loss Washington.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you kind of get it. That's where you get into the splitting hairs of it, right? Because if you throw those 4 teams up against the wall, whose resume is better? I think.
And by the way, the 1 loss Washington could be to Oregon in the big Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah, so
which
then
would
you've
really
got
be a mess.
Yeah, then you've got a real mess. So that's where the committee. That's where I don't envy their job when it comes to getting 4, because you do have to split hairs, which is why I wish one of them be like, look, man, we're splitting hairs here. Like when it comes down to it, we're trying to find a needle in a stack of needles. It's I don't know what to tell you that you want to hear that's going to make you feel better. We just think that X team is the best team to go up against this based on several totally arbitrary factors because everybody else is the same. And hate to break it to you guys, there's parity in college football.
Yep.
If you're not, I mean, and it's coming to the SEC too.
Yep.
It's coming.
Yep.
This is all good news, but when you see more parity, you're going to have tougher conversations.
Yep. It could be like in the end, there could be 8 or 9 teams and it'd be great. I want chaos. I want chaos. That's what I want. I want to see them struggle to get those 4 teams.
I just want one of them to live in Tallahassee. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't care who the other 3 are. I just personally need one of them to live in Tallahassee. Number 3, has Clemson turned it back on? Has Dabo, at least in the short term, been able to fuel all the negativity into the channel where they can win regularly again? For at least until he fixes his roster issue. We all picked Clemson to win the game because it's at home. North Carolina has been really spotty, but player for player, this is kind of an evenly matched game. But I don't know. I just don't trust them to go in. And if Clemson's turned it back on, that would be really, really interesting. If they have, maybe this is what woke Dabo up and made him look at, okay, here's what we've been doing wrong. I don't know if he's that introspective, but after that game against Notre Dame last week, I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, is this what he need? Was Tyler from Spartanburg the spark that lit the match?
I think he ought to get a game ball.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, they're getting better, but they're still not great. I mean, although they could finish very strong, if you were to finish out 8-4 and have a win over North Carolina to add to the mix, then I think that would be a good little ending to what was a really bad story, at least early on. I've seen some of the speculation about A&M, like would they go after Dabo, which is interesting, made me stop and think a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, he's got a little bit of momentum building right now. Cade Klubnik had a nice game, and it hasn't always been the case this year. So, yeah, maybe there's something a little bit, sparking back up here. It's not like they just lost all their talent. I mean, there might be areas where they're not as talented, but it's not like they lost everybody and they just suddenly were just some mundane program, out there in the Carolinas. I mean, they just needed a little bit of time to get it together, it looks like, and they have a chance to finish really strong. Number 2, can Louisville make the ACC title game? Can they do it? Can they withstand Miami? Look, they have the one loss, and it was a dud to Pitt. Then they almost had a dud against Virginia. Miami is kind of treading water here, but the game is in Miami. Mario Cristobal would love nothing more than to throw the rest of the ACC into chaos, I'm sure, with a win this week. Tyler Van Dyke needs a good game. Like, the dude needs a good game. Whether he has it in him or not remains to be seen. But if Louisville wins, they're in the ACC title game, and that would be remarkable turnaround for Jeff Brom in year 1. Yeah, it'd be a great finish. They are in the top 10 right now. I mean, they have a lot to play for and a lot in front of them if they can win this game, but it is a pretty big obstacle. Miami struggled over the last few weeks. Obviously Louisville had the blemish as well against Pitt, which is, you really look back on that, like what an ugly loss that was. But, I think Miami's slight favorites last I looked. But this should be one heck of a game. And, yeah, Louisville can do it. I mean, I think they can do it, but can and actually doing are two different things. So, yeah, that's a big game to watch for tomorrow morning. I'll be curious to see what happens if they do lose and North Carolina is playing for it against Clemson, how that affects that game. I'm really curious about that. Or if they do win, like does North Carolina, do they, knowing that, because there's no way Mac Brown's going to be able to keep that information from them. Right. Especially considering that Clemson, like even if he tried, as soon as they run out of the field, Clemson's going to throw that score up on the screen. So
yeah, no, you can't keep that. And not everyone. You look at everyone's got a phone.
Yeah.
Now I got a question about the ACC. Florida State's going to play for the championship against Louisville, maybe,
or North Carolina.
Okay. The Big Ten East champion's going to play against Iowa, right? That's not going to help them any. It's not going to help Florida State any. Are those two championship games going to in any way help those two teams, just other than it's just a win?
The only thing it's going to help Florida State is being undefeated if they win it, right? And that's assuming that they beat Florida in the Swamp next week. But say they do beat Florida in the Swamp next week and then beat Louisville, then all it's going to do is like, okay, you've got a 13-0 Power 5 team here, brand name team that's sitting there. So yeah, it's not going to help them. Like, it's not going to put them from 4-1.
No,
if they do, no. I mean, it's not going to be like that. So no, I mean, FSU just has to win. It would be very easy to, take FSU out and put Texas, Oregon, or Bama in that spot. And look, if Louisville wins out, which means they would only have one loss and they would have beaten Florida State, who had given them one loss, then they have an argument as well, although their schedule probably not as strong as some of the rest of the people that would be in front of them.
Beats Florida State, neither one of them make the play.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's just the excuse they need. Well, ACC, congratulations on a hard-fought season and enjoy the Orange Bowl. That's what's going to happen there. And number 1, what does the Texas offense look like without Jonathan Brooks? I think that is going to be not just for this game, but are there significant differences with Cedric Baxter in there or what they want to do with their run game than if he is in there, if Brooks was in there? how do they change that up? That's not just for this week. That's for going forward into the game against Texas Tech, into what could be the Big 12 title game, and into the playoff or the postseason, whatever that is. So I'm very curious to see if they if Baxter being in changes what they do or what they can expect from their running back position.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like Jonathan Brooks was in a really good groove and well on his way to having a huge stretch run. So without him, I do think that shuffles things up a little bit. It's not as much of a guarantee of kind of what you already had in place. Now that is more of a question mark, whereas it was a strong point for you. I mean, not to say those guys can't come in and, Baxter among them, play really well for you. That's certainly possible, and they've got a lot of weapons around that can take and alleviate some of that pressure off of those guys. But when it comes down to it and they need yardage, they could bank on Brooks, and now it's a little bit more of a question, like you said. So, I'm curious to see that as well. Do we find that out exactly tomorrow? I don't know, but they're going to need to – I mean, we're going to see the proof in the pudding over this stretch run, especially if they book a spot in the Big 12 title tomorrow. They're going to have, an extra game to play, and that run game's going to come into play, absolutely. So, that's a big loss for them, but how big is we'll start to see that tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Baxter, he's got like 300 or 400 yards rushing, but I've seen him also pop a couple because he's a 5-star elite player, not just a 5-star running back. He just hasn't had the opportunities because Brooks has been so good. I think Jatavian Sanders and the wide receivers, they'll try to open that up like they have been and see how. And Ewers can't afford an early turnover or two, obviously, like he did against a couple of teams this year. All right. Garrett Ross, thank you very much. Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, and Jack McKenzie tonight at 10:30, 365 Sports tonight on the local CW. And also tomorrow, our pregame will be at 12:30 until 2, Texas Christian University. They don't like to hear that. TCU hosts Baylor. We'll be right back here on 365 Sports. For Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak and our great sponsors and you, the audience, have a great weekend. Good night, 365 Sports.